Give me the thumbs up.
Did you hear anything about whether
Yes?
Nope.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the Board of Selectmen regular meeting of Wednesday, September 12th. And item 1 on the agenda is the Ad hoc Beecher Renovation Review Committee report. And Andy Esposito from the Beecher Ad hoc Renovation Committee is here tonight to provide us with an update on the work of the committee, which we appointed after the pipe burst incident at Beecher Road School last winter. As you know, Superintendent Gilbert also recently informed us there were some humidity problems at the school, just as classes were getting underway a few weeks ago. I forwarded the emails I received from him to you guys. I hope you got them. The committee has also looked into this issue, and Andy will be able to provide us with some details and a recommendation from the committee on how to address the situation. With Andy, we also have Jim Sisa. Hi, welcome, Jim, who has been acting as a consultant to the Woodbridge Board of Education. And welcome, Vito. I don't have you listed because I didn't know you were going to be here, but Vito Asparo is also here. Thank you. Andy, I just want to thank you again for your dedication to this building and the town. We appreciate all the time and effort you have put forward into this project through the years and your continued guidance going forward. So with that, I will invite you to come up and begin. Thank you.
Well, obviously, there was a major failure in the system, which caused, I don't know, I haven't got a count from Al, current count from Al, but I think we're up about $335,000 damage was done. And based on that, Beth appointed a committee which consisted of 2 of the members of the old building committee, which Jeff as chairman was one, and John Beltran from the Board of Education, plus the superintendent, Al, and Sheila. Okay, so we were the committee. We've been meeting since, I guess, March, and reviewing, trying to ascertain what really happened, and reviewing what transpired, what's been going on over the last 2 years, because there's things like hot water in the south, Beecher School South. I know nobody wants me to talk about it, but this is a situation where for years they have not had hot water in the bathrooms or at the sinks. We sat on building committees for 3.5 years. Sheila, where are you? Did you ever hear anything about hot water? No. Never heard about it. So
It first came to our attention.
it came to light based on
the committee looking into
this,
it, right?
this committee came to light again, this committee. We delivered our job was to deliver to the Board of Education a building that had an extended life cycle of 20 to 25 years. Recognizing, as Jim will say, is that the life expectancy on some of this equipment could be 18 to 22 years, okay? And in 2 years, after going through some of the things, in talking to Vito and talking to Bob and talking to people, we begin to, a picture begins to that things that just weren't getting done. I mean, the humidity problem in Beecher School, Beecher is not a new problem. The air conditioning we put in there, when we air conditioned it, was supposed to resolve that problem. It was never resolved. They had meetings with our engineer. They had meetings with our general contractor. And to this day, not resolved. And that's one of the things that's in this plan. 2 of the major pieces of equipment in the building, which are the humidifier in the pool, $2 million we spent. Of that $13 million budget was for Beecher Pool. Most expensive piece of equipment was that dehumidifier. That dehumidifier failed because the bearings were not greased. One of the next most expensive pieces of equipment was our chiller. We had a major problem with the chiller because it wasn't serviced properly. So a picture begins to develop, okay, for us. It says, hey, we have a lot of things going on here. Then we find out that the training that was supposed to be, that was in the contract, that both the general contractor and our consultant engineer were supposed to train people at Beecher, was never done. Not only was the training to be done, it was to be videotaped. Videotapes are not, no one can remember, no videotapes, and the training was never done. So we're 2 years into this program, no training was ever done on the system. And so and as far as the rooftop units that failed, that single unit that created $350,000, $35,000, whatever it is, worth of damage, we still don't have a real explanation of why it failed. And that's from our engineer, our current engineer. So decision was made that going forward, now I will say since we began to meet, there's been a lot of pro action taken by the Board of Education, Vito, and also bringing Jim on board to really begin to button up all the problems we were having, all these problems, administrative problems. So I think they've been doing a good job of that. But we are of the opinion, and I'm going to have Jim speak to all the technical stuff, that we need a third-party evaluation of our HVAC system. And we're recommending that be done, and we'd like to have it done as soon as possible. And now I'm going to turn the meeting over to Jim.
Thank you.
I don't know, Jim, they could probably hear you.
Okay. Good evening. I was brought on in April or so to kind of do a facilities analysis, which included the HVAC system. And through the season so far, I've been able to notice and help live through some of the issues with ineffective dehumidification and problems with the operation of the HVAC system as it was designed. And so I requested permission from the district administration to bring in some consultants that I have worked with successfully over the years. I've been doing this 28 years in districts around the country. Winter, summer, it doesn't matter. And so anyway, I did. And I think in front of you, I won't read to you, but I brought in a company called UCS, and the reason I brought them in is because there's a particular individual that works with them that has a very high expertise in building controls and solving problems and such. And quite frankly, I've used that vendor in my career for many, many years, as he's worked for different companies and started different controls divisions, but it's the person, with the brain and the knowledge, not married to a company. And so he came in and didn't charge anything, but spent a day at Beecher donating his time to look at the existing systems and the existing building management system that controls all of the systems, and did a brief look at the original schedule of operations and sequence of operations and those types of things. And he wrote up the report that's in front of you. Some of the highlights of that are, the current licensure that's in place does not allow for, the real programming and manipulation of the Honeywell building management system as an owner should have, to be able to make changes and such like that. In addition, in 3 of the classroom wings, unit ventilators were installed, and they just, by their nature are not effective at dehumidifying when you're only controlling to temperature. When you're in a building and you have fresh air requirements and the need to have that, you need to really have large chilled water coils that have chilled water flowing through them. But when you're only controlling the temperature, it satisfies very quickly. The chilled water valve shuts, and then you're just bringing in humid outside air. So, that's one of the base problems with that type of thing. I've experienced similar situations in places I work, and if you can add controls and have an engineer redesign it to control to humidity, CO2, and temperature, you can add some different types of controls to the fan motors, so you can slow them down and keep the valves open longer. It can make it does make a huge difference in the way you're able to control those types of things. In further investigations, the rooftop units that are there and the fan coil units in the classrooms They're just simply not working correctly. You know, the heat exchange portion of it, it is not effective. It's not providing the type of degree air to the to the classroom units, which is why one of the units froze, and you had that issue. But it was also found that none of the units, whether they're the unit ventilators or the fan coils or the ERVs, they don't have any freeze protection on them, such as freeze stats or anything like that, which are, just kind of hardwired equipment that if you get a rash of cold air, it'll just shut itself down. So anyways, after we found out those limitations from UCS, I asked permission to have an engineer that I've worked successfully with to come in and take a look. And so he donated a day and came in and looked at the system and came up with a cost proposal to review everything right from the ground zero. There's other problems such as, you should have a 42-degree temperature in your chilled water line from start to finish in your building. And when you get to the end of the loop in this building, it gets up to about 53 or 54 degrees, and that's just not effective dehumidification either. So as we saw different things like that, the temperature of the outside air coming into the ERVs is the same as the discharge air. There should be a considerable difference in that. A lot of the equipment certainly isn't performing as it was intended to be done. And we really need an expert consultant. The reason I chose, Van Zelm Engineers, I think you have the report in front of you. We've worked with Bill Donald extensively in my career, and not only is he an engineer, but he's an excellent commissioning agent. And so not only does he understand stuff on paper, the design phase, but really good field worker to be able to understand what's happening in the field, why something isn't working, what needs to be done to make it work, and propose remedies to do that.
Does anyone have any questions of Andy or Jim at this point? And then I'll keep going, but go ahead.
Is there any recourse with the people who install this in terms of?
I don't know if this is I'm not a litigator.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a litigator sitting in a room, and that's for him to deal with. And I think that our focus is to correct the environment in the building. We have 700 kids in that building. We have staff in that building, and we don't need mold in the building. We don't need problems that we've already paid to resolve, and they're not resolved. We think we need to get these resolved. We can't afford to have another failure of a rooftop unit, even though our response time is better now because we have better response time because of some of the corrective action that's taken place over the last few months in terms of how we get it done. There's still things that we can do to those units to make them more fail-safe, so to take out the human portion. So if there's a failure over a holiday or a weekend, the unit shuts down by itself. Okay, so there's things we have to do, and I believe these things are important to do. Now, as far as do we have recourse, Mika, I really don't want to get into that at this point in time.
So we're looking at it, Mika, and we had a meeting this morning and yesterday, and suffice it to say that at this point we don't know what the cause of the problem was, whether it was an improper design, whether it was improper maintenance, whether there was something that needed to be enhanced. So it's a little premature. That's why we hope to get a lot more information if we do this Van Zelm report and be able to give you a better response to your question. But it's a little premature now.
It's my understanding the chairman of the Board of Ed of Beecher High, Margaret Hamilton, is here, and it's my understanding that the Woodbridge Board of Ed met and made a motion, voted on supporting the request from the ad hoc committee to fund the proposal from Van Zelm Engineers for $34,625. And at the meeting this morning, we had a discussion with Bob Gilbert and Tony, and continued the discussion after the meeting, I think. And at this time, we thought we would ask, because it's early in the budget, we do this with a lot of departments early in the budget. For example, if the fire department has a problem, fund it out of your budget now because it's early in the year, and then we have contingency going forward should we need it or to replace it. But at this point, we agreed, and I think Bob agreed as well. Okay, thank you. Superintendent Gilbert's here as well. So we're going to ask at this time at the Board of Ed if it's okay with the board, if you all agree, to find the monies in the current budget of Beecher, the Woodbridge Board of Education. And maybe step up if you'd like at this point, because you're actually item 2 on the agenda. And so we won't be taking a vote to do that.
I think
if-
you take a vote just to support the idea of hiring
Okay.
Van Zell, and then the Board of Education will, from what I understand, initially pay
Okay.
for the services, and then at the end of the year, Tony said that we look and see where everybody is, and then we figure out what to do then.
So have you all had a chance to look at the Van Zelm Engineering Services proposal? Okay, so to get it going, I'll make a motion that we approve the Board of Education funding the proposal for $34,625.
So the only thing I want to say about that is that I talked to the representative of Van Zellen today and wanted to see whether they had some kind of a municipal rate that they make available to towns and communities, and he said he would check on it and get back to us. So this should be approved up to the amount asked for. It might be a little less, hopefully it is,
Okay.
but maybe it's not.
So I'll amend my motion to
Very good.
up to $34,625,000, and Joe, you seconded that?
Correct.
Any discussion further on this?
I had a question. What is your personal experience with this company, and why did you choose it, Van Zellen?
I don't know if you know or not, I work at Amity Schools at the district as the director of facilities there. And I've been working with them for the last 12 years in that particular district. Anytime we need to troubleshoot something, a similar problem to this actually, or to, we're in the process of replacing all of our 90s vintage air handlers. We've used them as the design phase. And from start to finish, from project management to the design to building meetings to having specifications that are very good with little to no change orders involved because of the thoroughness of them. I continue to ask our board to waive the bid requirement and to utilize them because of the good success that we've had with them.
Now, we did have a mold problem at the high school. Were they involved in remediating this or evaluating this?
They were the engineers of record, I guess it started probably 15 years ago. I've been here 12 years, so I wasn't here on the design phase of the renovation and the additions to the high school, but they were the engineers of record to correct that, yes.
All right.
Any other questions? So we have a motion and a second.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. It's unanimous. Done.
Done?
Yep. Now I'll ask
Thank
Bob
you.
to come up, and thank you guys very, very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thanks for all the meetings over the last couple of days. Item 2 on our agenda is the Woodbridge Board of Education Superintendent, Robert Gilbert.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for your support of the last agenda item and the conversation there, and we want to make things better, and I think we all agree with that, and we all share in that, and we want to get to the finish line with success. So that's our goal, and we're confident that that can happen with some of the things put in place. I do want to thank also the Board of Education from last week's meeting, because the Board of Education unanimously also supported this whole concept of moving forward with an independent study and coming up with what are the set of recommendations that need to be put in place to correct what we have going on right now. So thank you for that. In answer to your question, First Selectman, I think we do not have this amount budgeted, so I'll just say that clearly. We don't have, and there may be other ancillary costs that sometimes get woven into this, and so those items are not budgeted either, because we're running a fairly tight, efficient budget at this point, especially last year, as we made a lot of efficiencies and kind of removed a few things around the edges of our budget. So it's early in the year, as we've done in the past. These past 2 years, we will try our very best to see how we can economize, how we can find savings. We were able to do that at the end of this past year, when we were able to reduce a more sizable deficit to something more manageable. So it's too early for me to say exactly what that'll be. It would probably involve line item transfers. We saved a little here, so we're going to spend a little more there. So what those savings will be in other areas, I don't know what they are yet. So
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for trying.
sure, we will.
That's good.
Absolutely. So again, thank you for your support of Andy and Jim and what they brought to you. My report's fairly brief, so I'll just hit the highlights of that right now. As you know, summer's ended, and we did start the year off on August 20th. We had our new teacher orientation on that Monday, and then we followed with 3 days of teacher professional learning and professional development, as well as preparation for the school year ahead. The first day of school for students was August 27th. It seems like we've been there for a while now. I guess we have been. Kindergartners all got oriented, and the parents especially had their orientation. We had the typical first day bus ride, and we had the gradual ease in for our kindergartners by giving them half days in the beginning and moving them into a full day into the second week. We've had 3 open houses at the school, as we typically do, because of the large enrollment that we have and the parking and all the other factors, and we had a third of those last night, and 3 very, very successful and very well attended evenings for parents. Beth mentioned, and I'll just kind of confirm this, we provided several communications to parents in that third week of August, communicating to parents that we needed to do extra and very aggressive cleaning during that week to remedy some evidence of mold in the classrooms that was impacted by the heavy rainfall, excessive humidity, and the temperatures that we experienced this summer. Overall, parents were very appreciative, both in email as well as in personal conversations about how we were transparent and how we were on top of it, and were able to open school on time, given that little surprise that we had. Our current enrollment, as of today, is 846. We ended last year with 850, and we're starting pretty much picking up where we left off. As you probably remember from my past years of giving you the statistics, past history shows that we typically grow in enrollment during the course of the year. So we'll be watching that carefully. I'll be giving you monthly updates, and we're starting with 846, which is very full building. I think Andy said 700, so he must be thinking a few years ago.
I didn't want to correct him.
There you go.
Just from a budget standpoint, is the 846 something you include as part of your budget in terms of that number being lesser or more than what you may have anticipated?
So I think it's what we kind of planned for that. I mean, around that. I mean, we added one classroom in a particular grade that had more students beyond the classroom guidelines that we have of what the range is. So this is in line with what we had planned. And right now, class sizes are, with the exception of 5th and 6th grade, they're within the ranges that our Board of Ed guidelines show. 5th and 6th exceed them a little bit, but I would say this is pretty much in line with what we were kind of expecting. I just don't know how the year will play out. Sometimes it can really, it can really accelerate. So. We did institute a new registration process for all Beecher families, whether they're new or whether they're returning, and most parents have returned or updated their information online, and so we thank our parents for that. It's greatly appreciated. We're also using a new system for notification for emergencies or other just general information. It's called Swift K-12. It's the same system that all of the other BOA districts uses. From a financial standpoint, we have not had a full financial subcommittee meeting this year regarding the current budget. Our first meeting will be this coming Monday. Just as I reflect on the last year, we did end up with asking you for a supplemental appropriation of $97,000, which is greatly appreciated. It brought our deficit from a high of $180,000 down to less than $100,000. But we will be meeting next Monday, and it's too early to identify trends at this point. Obviously, we have some surprises to our budget that we talked about tonight with the study. And there'll be other special surprises as well. The typical trends do continue in that special education expenditures continue to be a very fluid area. We've had some students move in. We've had some students move out. We've had some service changes for students who are outside of the district, which are usually more expensive. So we'll be identifying those and reporting to you on a monthly basis on where we are for the full budget. And I'll just end by a very, very happy and wonderful picture. If you can picture it in your mind, you've probably been there before. The PTO Ice Cream Social took place this past Wednesday, a week ago today, and probably 1,000 people were on the Beecher grounds celebrating the beginning of the year. And I want to thank the PTO, certainly right here on televised. Thank you, PTO, for hosting this. Thank you to many of you who were there to serve ice cream, and the PTO does a great job for us, as you know. A lot of great fun events, but they raise a lot of money in the process between ice cream, Halloween hoot, and other things, so.
I felt like I was serving milkshakes instead of ice cream that was
it was dripping.
warm. Terry and I were just covered. It was turning to liquid.
You were bathing in ice cream.
But it was fun.
Yeah.
It was really great.
Yeah, thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Any questions? I'll be glad to take them.
Anybody have any questions? Well, thank you for
Okay.
everything. Thanks for the meetings and keep us informed.
Okay, we will not be a
Thank you.
stranger.
Okay. Item 3 on the agenda is the first selectmen's report, and it's going to be real brief this month because we've been busy. First, some unfortunate town tree news. I've been informed by our tree warden, Warren Connors, that all previous efforts to save the white ash tree in the front of the town library have failed, and the tree is not going to survive. This is the tree that sits in the semicircle curve of the library addition. The 1990 library expansion was planned to curve around it. Warren had a gentleman named Peter Tyrell, a highly qualified arborist who cared for this tree in the past, provide an assessment of the tree's condition at the end of August. The tree was treated last year, and a deep root fertilization was done to see if it would show signs of recovery from the emerald ash borer beetle, and unfortunately, not going to happen. Peter states, I feel that the tree is too far gone for any more treatments to have any effect on helping the ash recover. So we now look to having the tree removed and the site prepared for the planting of a new tree in its place. Betsy will have more details of that process later in the meeting regarding the progress it's related to the town center beautification plan. But I just wanted to let guys know about that in case you get any questions from people, because a lot of people are affectionate about it. The Town Plan and Zoning Commission meeting is going to hold a public hearing regarding the adoption of the proposed zoning regulations for the town of Woodbridge, which will take place on Thursday, September 20th at 7 p.m. in the senior cafeteria of the Center Building. We posted this information to the town website and sent out email notification for those subscribed for updates there. All the documents are available on the website for public review. And later in our agenda, we're going to have a funding transfer request to enable the project to upgrade the sound system here in our meeting room move forward. So you'll be able to hear me now. I know many people are interested in this and have urged that we improve the sound, so I want to provide the update. We have successfully applied for a grant funding from Cablevision Government Access Fund to help accomplish this, and I want to thank Pua and Sheila for coordinating this and moving this project forward. We will eagerly await its completion. So I attended a few meetings over the last month. On August 10th, I toured Fieldstone Village in Orange with Tony and Jerry. On the 16th of August, I attended an event at Massaro Farm and took a tour there with Farmer Steve. On the 20th, I visited Sperry Park to see some tree damage during some of the recent bad weather events we've had, and I will be looking into further. I'll talk about it further at other meetings. I don't have anything for tonight. On the 22nd, I attended the monthly SCROG meeting, and on the 23rd, I went to the Amity Middle School Bethany 7th grade picnic. On the 24th, I hosted the Halpern family who spent a day with the first selectman as part of the Rotary Club event, so that was fun. 3 little girls, it was great. And on 9/2, I attended the Santee's Rose Garden Memorial event, and then attended the annual dinner on the farm at Massaro. And then last but not least, on the 5th of September, I've already mentioned it, we helped scoop ice cream at the ice cream social. So it was a busy month. And with that, I will turn it over to liaison reports. Which way did I start? David, do you want to start this time?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Of the 3 meetings I usually go to, CUPOP didn't meet. The library committee is meeting now. And I did go to Human Services. I had a few items. In the capital budget, they are looking for a vehicle replacement for one of their vans. And I think they want to downsize from the present vehicle that they have down to something smaller. And they're looking for a grant that they will apply for in January to fund that. Nancy Fund has been speaking to representatives from Orange about the possibility of sharing youth evening service programs as a means of saving money and combining services, because I think Betsy Agla's going to speak to some of the reviews of some of their activities. Human Services is also exploring designs for a carport to protect their vehicles. in the winter months. Right now, what's happening is they leave them out, someone has to come early and shovel the snow off of them so that they can be used. And they're thinking about trying to change that. There's some activities this month and going forward at the Woodbridge Center. There are poker games, Tai Chi, yoga, and a breakfast lecture series. You can find out about those on the website. There is a Living Treasure Award coming up the 3rd of October at 5:30 at the Center Gym. 4 individuals are being honored at this event. They are Robert Conniff with the Fire Department, Dorothy Martino, who's been everywhere, Louisa Cunningham, and Leland Torrance. The Senior Center restroom and ramp proposal was reviewed with Olympic Construction yesterday. And also, the design proposal for the Woodbridge Center is being reviewed with the design committee. And that's it.
Thank you.
You bet.
I have a report this month,
Mika?
Beth.
Okay, thanks. Joe?
Thank you. There was a town planning and zoning meeting on Wednesday, the 12th, and as the first selectwoman mentioned, there will be a public hearing to receive comments regarding the proposed revision to the zoning regulations, which I think may have an impact one way or the other on our future development, and I would recommend that we give as much notice to the public about this public hearing, and that's Thursday, September 20th, 7 p.m. At the Senior Center. The other item that's of note, they did give Chris Dickerson on his proposal for a 4-lot subdivision, a 90-day extension to file the subdivision Mylar, and that was both some important part of the meeting. Also, on Thursday, September 6th, the Police Commission met, and most significantly, a hiring of an additional officer, an officer to replace one of the vacancies was approved. They also talked about the sensitivity of the canvas issue that many people were concerned about. They were doing very well financially, but that investigation that's still going on the incident on, I believe, Rimmon Road may have an impact. The police chief also reported that there was a memorandum of understanding for the school resource officer at Beecher Road School approved, and they're still looking at the need for 2 more vehicles, and in addition to hiring to fill more vacancies. And that's the results of the 2 committees.
Thank you.
Just a quick update from Amity Board of Ed. They recently swore in George Howard to the Board of Ed to replace the slot for Tom Hurley. And the superintendent search is in the process of concluding, and they're going to have a special meeting to make the announcement of the new candidate.
Great.
Would it be necessary to ask Joe a follow-up question on his?
Yep. Sure.
Are there any details of that TPZ plan that you would want to share with us?
No, there weren't any details handed out because they were still making some technical revisions. So I would recommend perhaps that for board members, we could get a copy of the proposal.
It's 100-something plus pages, I
Yeah,
think.
right.
Online now?
Yeah, it's online, right? It's posted? Yeah. So you could take a peek. Yeah. A summary? Okay. So,
It's very significant.
Okay, thank you.
okay. Moving on to item 5 is CERC, update on the Woodbridge fiscal health. And, hold on one second. Wait, I have before you turn off the lights, I have to introduce them. Now you're trying to rush it here, sorry. Tonight we have Bob Santee and Rachel Gretencourt, have I said that correctly? Thank you, from CERC, which is the Connecticut Economic Resource Center, to present their initial work on our fiscal health analysis. Just to recap, the CERC team has been gathering detailed information since they came to us back in June for our initial input on comparison towns. They have completed a deep dive into the details of our grand list and our town budget to help us better understand our current fiscal health and compare us to other similar municipalities. Tonight, they will present their initial findings, and after they present their material, they would also like to engage in dialogue, bless you, with the selectmen in anticipation of incorporating any reaction or questions from us into a final report, which they will deliver at our October meeting. Sorry. Just one note, Selectman Dye is not able to be here tonight, so I'll be sure to circle back to him after he's had a chance to watch the video of the presentation to be sure his input and any questions are also relayed to CERC. As I know, he has expressed his interest in this topic and would benefit from his thoughts. We've talked about budget issues going forward, so unfortunately he couldn't be here. Again, our aim with this initiative is to be sure we are leaving no stone unturned as we seek to hold down costs and save taxpayer dollars wherever possible. So with that, we will turn to you, Bob. Now, the lights or no lights? You need lights?
We don't need light, no.
You don't need lights? Okay.
No.
And all I'm gonna do is, thank you for that, and thank you all, I'll say a couple of words, most of which you've already said, and then turn it over to Rachel. But just as a reminder, you know, we've had an engagement with the town to do basically two things: provide some support to the EDC, and then do this fiscal health analysis. The idea really is to provide you with more data and information so that you can make better decisions when it comes to budget priorities. And I heard a number today, which you may say later, but we've been looking at grand lists across the state, and I wanted to update the figure that I had on how many towns have actually recovered the residential component of their grand list since 2008, and it's a grand total of 8 towns.
On an inflation adjusted
On an
basis.
inflation, see, I should just let her do the whole thing, you know.
Yeah.
169 towns. So this is a critical issue facing towns
Yeah.
across Connecticut. And the other thing,
We're not.
you're not one of the 8, no. But what does hold up better is you see growth in many towns in the commercial and industrial component, which may be something you want to talk about as far as the balance is concerned. So these are preliminary results. We are still working with the tax assessor here to try and give you more granular data with regard to the residential component, because it would be really great to know which component of residential, which is close to 90% of your total assets, is holding its value and which component isn't holding its value as you make decisions about whether or not you want to develop certain types of housing in your community. So it's not to push you in one direction or another, it's to give you the data on which you can make better budget decisions. So we will have a final report in time for your October meeting. You're going to see these slides, you're going to want to ask questions as we go along. So I would welcome questions as we go along, unless you think we're getting too long. But I think it's just going to be easier to answer the questions as we go through the slides. And I'd like to introduce Rachel again and have her really pick up the ball here and run with it.
All right. Yes, thanks so much for having us. This has been a really exciting project to work on. You know, we love to see towns really kind of take the lead in terms of, you know, collecting data and making, you know, decisions on that kind of basis. The first step that we did, this will be a review for some of you who we've been working with along the process. The first step that we did was to use some different metrics to select towns that are similar to Woodbridge in certain components, so to form our comparison group. So the criteria that we used were the change in the equalized net grand list over the last 5 years. So Woodbridge has decreased, so we chose other towns whose equalized net grand list also decreased, or that was one of the criteria. The portion of the population who's under age 19, the portion of the population over age 65, the land area in square miles, the total population as of 2016, the DRG as of 2016. If you're familiar with the State Board of Education, is the DRGs are the groupings they use to kind of classify schools based on certain criteria, such as number of students who are in poverty, number of English language learners, and a number of different criteria that they use to group school districts. The next criteria is the percent of the equalized net grand list that is residential, the percent of the equalized net grand list that is commercial, industrial, or public utility related, whether they have a regional school district, as Woodbridge does, and then there was another category for town input where we took feedback from the town to say, okay, these are other towns that we like to compare ourselves to or that we think we're similar to. And so giving all the municipalities in Connecticut a score for whether they met those criteria or not, whether they were within one standard deviation of Woodbridge's score or not. These were the top towns that scored 7 or higher in terms of those criteria being similar to Woodbridge. So, any questions about how that group was arrived at? Okay. So on all of these slides, the portion on the left is we'll have Woodbridge and that comparison town groups that I just explained how we selected. And then on the right, we included some other geographic areas, including the state of Connecticut, as well as other towns that we heard that some residents of Woodbridge like to compare themselves to, or that you might be curious, how your town compares to their town. So they weren't part of the comparison towns group, but we included them so that you can, kind of see where you stand relative to those other towns as well. So this first slide is overall population growth from 2008 to 2016. Based on U.S. Census data, Woodbridge had a slight decrease in population during that period. The state of Connecticut overall had a 5% increase. And as you can see, that's one of the, you had, since you had a decrease, it was lower than most of the comparison towns. The next one is the portion of children under age 18. So Woodbridge has a slightly higher portion of children under age 18 at 24% of the population, as compared to the state of Connecticut, which has 22%. And it's slightly higher than the average for the comparison towns, although that portion decreased between 2000 and 2016. Yes? Sure.
Going back to the first slide where you looked at the criteria for comparable towns, is there a reason why you wouldn't do a category to look at the average, like median income?
Median income is included in the DRG. So that's one.
That's not just a school-specific rating?
It's not school. It's the community and kind of their ability to support schools, as well as the those other factors that I mentioned. Okay. So it would have duplicated an element that's already in the DRG.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? Okay. All right, we'll move on to slide 6. Slide 6 shows the dependency ratio, which refers to the share of basically the non-working age population. So it's the portion of the population that is under age 18 plus seniors 65 and over. Now in this particular case, dependency refers to populations who may be eligible for additional government services, for example, particularly at the federal level. It doesn't necessarily mean financial dependency as in, they're not self-sufficient. But Woodbridge has a higher dependency ratio than many of the comparison towns. And in fact, Woodbridge is higher than the state average in both of those population groups, both the children under age 18 and in the portion of seniors that you have in your town. The dependency ratio did increase slightly from 2000 to 2016, but at a lower rate than many of the other similar towns. Again, many of the similar towns that increase in the dependency ratio was driven by the population of seniors, 65 and over.
Can I just add?
Yes.
I want to add just one thing on the dependency ratio, and it has to do with the fact that these are not necessarily people who are on assistance, but they are people that might be on fixed income. They're more retired. So the higher the dependency rate, the less people you have that are actively engaged in the workforce, whom you assume are in a position to pay for some of the expenses of your town. So that's what you're looking at. It's why it's important. A high dependency rate may indicate you have fewer taxpayers to bear the burden. Is that fair? Did I say that okay? Okay. He's wondering.
Require a lot of town services, but pay much more into the.
No, actually, I think it's more because you have school-age children.
No.
They are
The
no,
elderly
dependent over
population
65.
on, the elderly population on fixed
Yeah.
income is
Right.
what I was referring to, not the one who's school-age children. Yeah, this is like a bimodal distribution.
They tend to do more like ambulance services and health services, things like that. But no, they're not taking advantage of the schools. You're right.
But have you looked at the cost to the towns of the over 65 population versus the school-age population?
No.
No, okay.
Okay, great. So moving on to slide 8. This one shows household incomes. And in Woodbridge, you experienced a greater increase in household income than a number of the comparison towns. It was slightly below the state average, but still doing fairly well. A number of the comparison towns experienced a decrease in household income over the period from 2009 to 2016. Next, we're moving on to job growth, and in this case, job growth refers to jobs that are located in Woodbridge, regardless of where the employee lives. So the employee could live in Woodbridge or could live elsewhere. But Woodbridge experienced a 15% job growth between 2010 and 2016, which was fairly high, much higher than the state of Connecticut overall, and one of the highest in the comparison towns groups as well. That job growth was spread over a number of different industries. So the chart on slide 10 shows you, and this is in order by the largest growth in the number of jobs. So the largest number of jobs growth was in healthcare and social assistance, and then followed by a number of other industries. The government actually decreased by 1.
So these are people who live in town who have jobs in these industries.
Who are employed in Woodbridge, regardless of where they live. Right, so if someone from Hamden has a job in Woodbridge, that job would be counted. Correct.
Thank you.
Correct. Okay. Now we're going to get to the unemployment rate. So this is the unemployment rate of Woodbridge residents, so regardless of where they work. So Woodbridge had actually the lowest unemployment rate of any of the comparison towns as of 2017, and was also much lower than the state of Connecticut as a whole. In terms of change in the real equalized net grand list, this is what Bob was referencing earlier. We did all of the net grand list calculations on an inflation adjusted basis, because obviously that shows your change in purchasing power. So, if your net grand list went up on a nominal basis, but inflation increased faster, then you're still losing purchasing power over time, even if you've had nominal increases. So these, the next few slides are all on an inflation adjusted basis. As you can see statewide, the median change was a 15% decrease in the real equalized net grand list between 2008 and 2016. Woodbridge's decrease was 14%, so it was slightly better than the state median, and kind of in the middle of the comparison town groups as well. So basically, you know, what happened in Woodbridge is happening on a statewide basis. Bob referenced earlier, for the total equalized net grand list, there were only 8 towns that had an increase on a real equalized net on an equalized net grand list basis. When you look at just the residential portion, there were only 9 municipalities that had an increase. So Woodbridge's decreased by 14%, which again, maybe slightly better than the comparison towns group, but you know, not far outside the range of what's happening across the state.
Rich, just to correlate, just, in my mind, I'm just having a hard time with one. If it looks like there was a pretty, I won't say significant, but positive increase in terms of jobs in Woodbridge. Would, in my mind, generally indicate that there was some sort of commercial growth in Woodbridge. But then the grand list is down significantly. Is that just saying that a lot of people are moving out of town and the business might be growing, but we're losing revenue because usually, or when we're not reselling their properties? Or I'm just trying to
well, the
correlate
grand
that.
list would speak to the value of homes. Now, part of this is you know, the starting period is 2008, and obviously we all know what happened at the end of 2008. So basically, everything across the board took a pretty big hit during that time period. But yeah, that is one interesting point that, you know, is kind of shown on slide 14. You know, even though you did have fairly significant job growth, it didn't play out in terms of a significant increase in the, you know, commercial, industrial, and public utility portion of the grand list, which is kind of counter to
Property
you know,
values is probably
the
what's
property
impacting
values,
the grand
correct.
list more significantly than the lack of business is what I'm seeing.
If you look at the industry slide, and I didn't look at it quickly, I didn't look at, just where the growth was primarily is healthcare and social assistance. That's probably a facility that was already in town and then just increased its employment.
Right.
So,
And that increase could be people outside of Woodbridge.
yes, yes,
Right.
Who don't own real estate, who are not looking to move to Woodbridge.
right, right.
Yeah.
So that and administrative and support and waste management, you probably know better than we do who those companies are, you know, and where their facilities are.
Do you have a breakdown of how many people from out of Woodbridge are in that number in our increase? You didn't break that down?
No,
do that.
no, it doesn't. It's just the number of jobs located in the town, regardless of where the employee lives.
But it could be almost 100, could be 90% of people outside Woodbridge. that-
Correct, correct, yeah.
But you did get the benefit of some increase to your grand list when, this is an extended care facility, I assume?
We have a few.
When that was built.
Three of them.
Yeah, okay. That's what it is then.
Okay. All right. Okay. The next slide references equalized mill rates. On average, Connecticut experienced a 44% increase in equalized mill rates between 2008 and 2016. Again, you know, the net grand list is going down, expenses have remained the same or gone up, so, you know, the mill rate's going to go up overall. Woodbridge started out with a slightly higher than average mill rate, but experienced a smaller increase than a number of the other towns in your comparison group. So, so you did not go up as much as other people did. So that's good.
Takes care of a common myth that everybody is under, I think.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, the average for the state of Connecticut was a 44% increase, and Woodbridge's was about 40%. Oops. Okay. So next we're going to look
David
at.
has
Equalized
Oh,
mill
I'm sorry,
rate,
sorry.
mill rate is adjusted for inflation, that's where you get that number?
The equalized mill rate is adjusted for the fact that assessments may have been done in valuing the net grand list. Those assessments can take place, you know, in a cycle over a period of years, and so the state basically looks at assessed values of homes and current sale prices of homes each year, and to adjust for the fact that those take place over a period of time so that they can be comparable from one town to the other. Otherwise, if one town had their assessments done 5 years ago and one town had their assessments done last year, during that period, housing prices could have changed, so those numbers wouldn't really be comparable from one town to the next. So your equalized mill rate may be different from your actual mill rate when you're
Well, it's very
calculating your
different from our
taxes for that
actual mill
reason.
rate.
It's used for comparison from one town to the next. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, UCOA. UCOA is the Uniform Chart of Accounts, which you may be familiar with. It's a municipal benchmarking system for revenues and expenditures. It was implemented by OPM a couple years back, designed to increase transparency and to allow towns to compare their expenditures and their revenues to other towns. Yay! It's exactly what you want to do. So municipalities are supposed to be filing annual reports with OPM to put their data into the system. Now, before we take a look at the UCOA data, there are a number of limitations. It is a fairly new system. A lot of municipalities haven't standardized their accounting to be in line with UCOA, so there are some mapping issues. Things aren't necessarily categorized in the same place or the same way from town to town. And then, for example, transfers from other funds, some people net them out, some people show the full expense and show the transfer as a revenue item. So take this with a grain of salt. These aren't, this isn't the end all be all, it's just another data point that you can take a look at. But with that caveat, we can go ahead and take a look at how Woodbridge compares to some of the towns that we've been looking at. So this is the total. Oh, I'm sorry. Go
Any
ahead.
particular reason that the towns compared here are differ from what we started with?
Yes, because these are the only ones that had data for 2017 out of both categories together. A lot of towns didn't actually report data, so that's why. Got to work with what you got.
Limitations.
Right. So the first one is revenue per capita in terms of total dollar value. So again, of the towns that had available data that we've been looking at, you can see the total. Woodbridge is kind of in the middle, maybe on the slightly higher end in terms of their per capita revenue. Those big orange bars represent taxes. So as you can see, the lion's share for all of the towns, the lion's share comes from property tax revenue. The next slide is revenue per capita, and these are the percentages. Again, the scale starts at about 80%, because otherwise the top portions of the box are unreadable. But again, so for Woodbridge, about 92% of the total revenue comes from taxes. Again, fairly similar to most of the other towns, except maybe West Hartford, whose portion is a little bit lower. Okay, the next slide is non-educational expenses per capita. Woodbridge is on the higher end, but maybe not significantly higher than some of the other towns that you've been looking at, maybe a little bit higher. And then the following slide shows the portion of the expenses, the percent that goes to each different department. And as you can see, those are kind of all over the map in terms of the expenses per capita by where it's allocated. And if you want more detail on these the revenue and expense figures, I handed out it wasn't very legible on the chart, but I handed out the one-page sheet, has the actual figures for 2017 if you want to look at the specific numbers. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is a complicated slide, but it's a really useful slide. And so what you want to do is compare the size of each colored blocks. So public safety happens to be on the bottom of each stack. And capital outlay, I guess, is on the top of each stack. So you're gonna move up the stack for each town, and you can look across and see how you compare in each of the areas. So, other isn't a terribly useful one. I was just gonna look at that one. But, you know, I would say, what's the green near the top there? General government?
Yes.
So you can
The
just
dark
look
green.
across at that second from the top, right across all the bars, and see how you compare. And you have a very small piece that's general government as opposed, as compared to most of those others.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're curious about the categories, the OPM does have a manual on their website that kind of lists, you know, what specific expenses should go into each category. Again, they're not always done 100% accurately because of the different towns' accounting systems, but, you know, it's a good start. And, you know.
It's a good start. If you look at the chart here, expenses, it looks as if West Hartford has no culture and recreation.
Which we
They might not have reported it.
They would,
So-
they would take issue with your
Or they-
characterization.
I'm surprised by that.
Or it's combined into
probably
another
could be
department
somewhere else.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, you know, if you have two or three you want to compare, you have to sort of, as you indicated, a deeper dive into.
right,
Yeah.
right, yeah. Yeah, again, this is a fairly new system. They're
Yeah.
still getting the kinks worked out.
It's better than anything you've ever had.
Yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
starting point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's a great effort, and if, you know, if we can get some of those bugs worked out, this would
Yeah.
be really, really,
It's a little difficult to
Even more
report at the moment, so
Correct.
if they can make it easier to report, more towns would probably do it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and next is school districts. This shows the net current expenditures per pupil, and this is from the State Department of Education. All of their figures are by school district, so Woodbridge is on here twice, once for the Woodbridge School District and one for District 5, which are highlighted on here. And again, the per pupil expenditures of those two districts are, you know, marginally higher than the state average of $17,120 per student, but not significantly higher, and they're, you know, generally in line with, you know, what similar towns are spending. So, and this is just the comparison town groups, because again, we selected for towns that had regional school districts, so some of them are similar to Woodbridge. They have, you know, a district for elementary and a separate one for high school that might be regional, and then some of them, the entire district is regional.
Yeah, I think you know better than I the results you get out of your school system, and it would be interesting to use some sort of measure of result and compare it to these numbers. Maybe we can take a look at that for you.
I have a question.
Sure.
How did you come up with that figure for K through 6?
This figure,
Mm-hmm.
it's on the State Department of Education website. These are all State Department of Education numbers. It's for the 2015-2016 school year.
Any reason orange isn't on here? Just out of curiosity. It's been on everything else.
Because this is just the comparison town groups, which is the left half of the groups that we've been looking at.
We did have to state it.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, am I doing this?
Yeah, do you want to sum it up?
Jerry asked me the question before the meeting began, which is, so how did we do? And you are not outliers on much of this, but it does give you some indications of where there may be some opportunity to either rebalance revenues or rebalance expenditures. The dependency ratio is higher than it was, so that again goes to the fact that those over 65 have increased and those under 18 have decreased. So that's one thing to be thinking about as far as the types of services and the expenses. Household incomes, that we saw the number, it stopped on the chart.
Can I stop you for one second? I have a question. Item 1, since 2000, the portion of Woodbridge's population under age 18 has decreased. And I'm looking at slide 5. And it says Woodbridge has a slightly higher portion of children under age 18 than Connecticut as a whole.
Right, so
What am I?
you have, yeah, so you have a higher portion of children under age 18 than the state of Connecticut. But over time, your portion has been decreasing.
Okay.
So you may have started higher and you've
I
been
got it.
decreasing, but
Okay.
you're still higher than the state
All right.
average.
Thank you for the
Yep,
clarification.
perfect.
Sorry.
It's all right.
It was a long day.
No, I totally understand.
I was looking over. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Can you move it forward again?
Oh, yep, sorry.
Sorry, no, we made her go back to 5.
Oops.
Yeah.
There we go.
Right in there, yeah. We saw the increase in jobs since 2009, and you are, you've always been under the state unemployment rate, clearly. We've talked about the fact that most towns' grants lists have not recovered, and town CEOs, which you know, Beth, are really looking to what are we going to do. And what happens oftentimes, now I'm putting my economic development hat on, is because of the crunch, towns tend to say, well, that project that's come in the door, we really need to approve that, rather than trying to maintain some sense of what do we really want in town and going after the things that you want. But that's one of the things that naturally towns do, is look at the commercial and industrial component of the grand list and say, gee, what can we do to increase that? Because that adds value quicker to the grand list than residential does. So that's one thing that certainly you want to be looking at. And we talked about the 44 versus the 40% as far as the growth in the mill rate since 2008, right? School and non-educational expenses per capita are slightly higher than average, but really not significantly out of line. And, I think that is a myth bust. Everybody likes to say we're taxed to death. And it's good to have information that sort of puts you squarely in the middle of the pack as far as that's concerned.
Those two ideas are not,
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Needed to follow you there. So we would love to hear if there's any other feedback from you. One of the things we said to the team that hired us was that this is the first time we've done this exercise. We work with grand lists a lot, but this is the first time we've done a fiscal analysis, fiscal health analysis. So if there are additional things that you would like to see that we haven't talked about, if we can find that data, we'd be happy to add them to the report. And then we'd finalize the report for presentation to you in October. Yeah.
And one of the things that I have an unbalance with is our elementary school system. The Woodbridge Board has realized a growth in enrollment over the past number of years. One of the only, I think, one of 3 in the state of Connecticut that are actually growing, which flies kind of in the face of, but not completely, in the face of their under 18 being down, and understanding that there's lesser amount total. It would be kind of interesting to see exactly what those numbers bear out in terms of what they specifically are, because that's one of our challenges, is our school system is taxed more, or there's more requirement for it. But the numbers don't seem to be bearing that in terms of the general numbers.
Okay, yeah, and that could be a difference in terms of the time frame that's referenced as well. I think when we looked at the dependency ratios and those things, we were looking at the period from 2000 to 2016 based on census data. So anything that's happened in the last couple of years wouldn't be captured in the census data. And again, it could have gone up or down. It could have varied, a number of different ways during that 16-year time period that was covered. So. We can certainly look at more recent enrollment statistics if you think that would be helpful.
Did you look at the high school as well? I saw through K through 6.
Yeah, there's nobody on there. It's number 5.
Okay, thank you, I missed that.
Just in terms of the expenses, it's on here. We didn't look at school enrollments. We just used the census population data for the portion of the population under age 18, but we didn't split it out by age group.
What are some of the simulated changes that you're going to look at? in next steps. Address questions. If current trends continue, what will this mean for Woodbridge? And then how would simulated changes in the town's revenues or expenses impact the longer 10-year financial picture?
You want me to do that?
Yeah, sure.
That's something we could talk about right now. We've talked a
Okay.
little bit as we've gone through the exercise on residential versus commercial. What type of commercial, where we would probably then look to get some comparable information from the assessor on, here's what we got the last time we developed 50,000 square foot of this type of property, and then try and extrapolate as to what that would mean for you longer term. Somebody suggested we look at development of a golf course. I don't know whether you want us to do that or not, but,
Stay tuned.
yeah.
Some towns, Bob, some towns can't really do a lot with the commercial because of limitations on size and area and things like that.
Yeah.
I've noticed that there's been a huge push on many towns to look for, even though housing doesn't grow as much as commercial, at appropriate types of housing for towns. And in other words, you shouldn't, I assume we shouldn't discount that.
Right.
Because that's, although it's not commercial, it is a possibility of really increasing the grand list.
3 units or more of housing in a development is counted in your commercial part of your grand list. And this is anecdotal, so I want to say that to begin with, but some of the towns we've looked at, it's the smaller units, that are close to transit, that are part of a walkable downtown, that are attractive. And sometimes more suburban communities think we're talking about New Haven or Bridgeport when you talk about that. But any town that has a town center or has a part of town that is like that has the opportunity to put units of housing in that are multiple, not just single family homes, and that would, but you've got to decide that's what you want to do.
Would over 55 housing be considered commercial as well?
I believe so. Do you know that? I'm
If
pretty
it's more
sure
than
it
3
is.
Just
units out
apartment.
there.
Yeah, I think it's
based
just
on
the
number of
units.
units. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
yeah.
It's great stuff, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very,
We
very
find, you said it when we started, but this has been great for us. We really love providing this type of information.
You may hear from Selectman Dye.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm sure
Yeah, of
he's
course.
very interested in this as well, so.
Yeah.
Great.
And to anyone else, I would encourage any of the other selectmen to, how best to get in touch with you directly or through
We can cut.
Here's the
have
number
it-
at the back, right?
Yep, yep. Our
Mrs. Shaw
contact
or
info is there.
Betsy?
Contact through,
Betsy or Sheila?
Sheila.
Okay,
Sheila.
great.
yeah.
Thank
Have
you.
you,
This is
do you
very-
know of any recommendations or any such type focuses that are recommended to try to stimulate certain areas based on information such as this?
I think that's something we develop with you
Okay.
as you go through your discussions on next year's budget. If you want some support on, what would happen if we did this, that, or the other thing, we'd be happy to answer those questions. It depends on the town, every town's gonna wanna develop in a different way, so,
There's some thoughts
We'd be
and some
happy to do
what
that.
ifs, maybe
yeah.
The only
I'll
other thing I
be in
wanted to
touch.
mention was potentially the housing market in terms of, like, for example, the value of the homes are so big a part of this.
Right.
Be curious to measure those against those same towns to see exactly if they're, what there is there, for whatever that's worth.
Someday we'd love to be able to do that. We actually were responding to something today where one region of the state is trying to build a model so that they can do that. We would have to go to each town. So we're working with the assessor here right now. It's very difficult for someone outside of a town to have a good handle on what part of the residential component of the grand list is holding its value and what isn't. But your assessor knows the neighborhoods. So she can say to us, well, if we looked at the housing here, I can tell you that the median housing value there is 200,000. And if we went to this neighborhood, it's 600,000. And then we can look at it over a 10-year period and say, well, which one held its value? So that we'd like to be able to do that at least for your grand list. And I don't think there's a way of doing it except for the census. The census has a category which we use, but it's self-reported. So owners of a house are asked how much their house is worth. Okay? You know, so if they lie every time and every town lies the same amount, we can probably use that data. But it's not as great as we'd like. And there's some Zillow data we've been talking about, whether we can use that. But that has problems with it as well. So there really isn't a good data source yet. Thank you. Thank you all. Sorry to hold up the rest of your meeting.
No worries, thank you. Okay, moving on, it's after 6, so we'll start with public comment. Is there anyone here from the public? Hey, Ramey.
Hi. I know you're wondering, why is this dog park lady doing back here? I've missed all of you. I wanted to just come forward tonight to request permission. I really tried to get on the agenda. Betsy and spoke with Bonnie through emails. I contacted Jerry. Apparently you had a very full agenda for tonight and very little time.
We're here and we have to go to here.
I'm gonna make this very quick. The reason I wanna come now though, rather than wait till the October BOS, is because the event we have planned has everything to do with Halloween, and that will be passed, of course, by the time, enough time to plan an event for that sort of nature. It's pretty much what we did last year, Beth, when you were the judge at the costume contest for the dogs with the animal shelter. And that's what we want to do, but do it as the dog park cooperative. And I've already contacted Karen Lombardi to make sure that, you know, we're not conflicted with anything she's doing, and she assured me she's not having a contest. And I also invited her to attend our function and to kind of maybe take advantage of this opportunity to go over dog park expectations, rules, you know, just general behavior. And we have very little, anything that would require money will be through donations. So we're not going to be selling anything. There will be no merchandise at that time. We simply want to boost morale, bring our people together, get some donations from our members, and just have an outside event, because October really is the last month of really warm weather.
Do you have a date for this?
We do. We have 3 dates in mind. I've checked your calendar. We're looking at
We're going to do it once, right?
Yes, just
Okay,
once.
okay.
And it would be, so we're looking at Sunday, October 21st, or Saturday, October 27th, or Sunday, October 28th. You have one Fallapalooza event on the 27th at the New England Brewing. They're having a kids costume and pumpkin carving contest from 12 to 6. We would be doing our event earlier, from 11 to 12. We don't think we would overlap with them. Of course, we would love for those kids in the costumes to come to our event with their dogs in costumes and enter our contest as well. And the other thing is, there's really nothing going on a Sunday. So if we choose one of the Sundays, it's not going to conflict with anything that's going on in town. We would want to do it over at the field in the space where we hope to have the dog park, probably in the rink area. We will have judges. We have invited some dog trainers, an agility trainer, the K9 officer team with his beautiful German Shepherd that won the Olympics for Connecticut has been invited to come and do a demonstration, which would be very exciting because that dog is amazing. So we have some really cute, like a little kissing booth for dogs and some really cute things. It's just a way to boost morale, bring people together. So that's all I really had to say. Try to talk about it.
Necessarily, we need permission of the Board of Selectmen to do this because it's part of Fallapalooza. So
Well, that's
what
what
do
I
you
was
think?
thinking.
Do you think they need it, Jerry? Oh, you missed the.
Do you have any, so you don't
And
have
Tony
any
has a
food
question as well.
that you're selling, or
We
food
have
trucks,
invited a
or?
food truck for the dogs. It's a treat truck from Beth Friends in Bethany. They would be open for business, but they don't have to come if that's a problem.
No, it's not a problem. Usually
Yeah.
we require.
But they have to get a permit, not
certain,
us.
yeah, we
Yeah.
require permits and insurance certificates, that kind of thing. It's just paperwork.
We don't perceive having more than 30 people. It's going to be small. We'll be lucky if 30 people show up with dogs in costumes, but we'd love to have more than that. So we're thinking it'll be about 30.
Okay.
I don't see any reason why there would need to be a permit, but you would need to speak with the committee putting together Fallapalooza because the marketing materials are like 99.999%
We don't
done.
even need to be on their marketing materials.
But they'd still
Yeah.
need to decide if you're part of their event.
I would be glad to speak to them. Yes,
So
yes.
I'll be speaking with them.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Do you need a permit to have an event?
Well, there's not a permit, but generally people come and ask permission of the Board of Selectmen to do that.
Oh.
Well, yeah, Are you talking about the
There's no
vendor?
permit.
The dog truck vendor, is that what you're speaking of? Because I'm here now asking permission. And we really tried on Monday.
When is it?
Where we have 3 dates to choose from. Yeah.
27, 28. We could do it on the second Wednesday in October, but I know you want to plan.
I pretty much have it planned.
Well, I'll put it out this way.
Yeah.
If there's unanimous consent here,
Yeah,
there's
we
no
could-
discussion,
we
maybe you
could-
can do it now and just.
Perhaps it's a consensus of the board
Right, add
to
an
add
item
it to the agenda.
Right.
How about why don't we do that real quick?
Okay.
I'll
that'd be
make a
great.
motion that we add it to the agenda tonight, second. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Okay, so the motion will be to allow,
So, I've got the motion
no,
first.
go ahead, all right.
So my only thing was gonna be that, but, you know, we'll just discuss particulars, sometimes we have insurance requirements or other parking, we have like particulars we can discuss with Betsy when we're finished.
I did
Nothing
contact
major,
the
but-
police already to ask them about an event like
Yeah,
this.
it's not major, we just
I know.
make sure we're on the same page.
I don't think there's
Something
gonna be
might
an
come up
overflow of
afterward.
parking. He did mention they could park at the library and use the crosswalk.
Right, okay.
So what
So the
date?
motion is contingent upon all,
Subject to review,
the
yeah.
review
And-
of
and,
appropriate
Yeah.
departments.
All right.
Good.
And a date of what would you guys prefer, 21, 27, 28? My concern is the fire department, I believe, is doing
Theirs is the 31st.
31st, okay?
Mhm.
Do they close the field ahead of time? Not at all, okay. Just that day, okay, 12 hours, okay.
That's not one of the days.
All right, 10/21, 10/27, or 10/28?
10/28 would pose the least conflicts because the 27th there are 2 events as
Okay.
part of Fallapalooza, and I think the Halloween Hoot is that day as well.
That's the 20th, the Halloween hoot, I was told. Have they changed that?
Well, it's not part of Fallapalooza
Okay.
because it's not open to the public, so I,
I just
could be
spoke
wrong.
to them. They said the 20th was the
Okay, then
hoot.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I think 28th sounds, if you can handle the 28th, does that ring?
we'll take
For you
whatever you
guys?
give us, Beth,
Okay,
dear.
I'll make a motion with all the stipulations that we discussed, approved. We may have to get back to you with some of the things, insurance and things like that, to allow you guys to have, what is it called now, the Woodbridge dog?
Well, we're thinking something cute like Howl and Prowl or, you know.
No, I meant the name of your group, to give you permission. the
Woodbridge Dog Park Cooperative,
To have, from the hours of
12 to 1. Oh, let's say 11, we said 11 to 1.
11 to 1 at the Fitzgerald Field on
Yeah.
October 28th. Is there a second? Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor? Okay,
Thank you. Come out and bring your dogs.
there you go. Okay, thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Bettina? You have to, state your name.
My name
Not I
is
state
Bettina
your name.
Thiel, and I just wanted to say thank you to Pua also and to Sheila for getting this microphone system working better. However, I can perfectly hear you guys on this side. I can't hear zilch from this side, from the rest of the table. So I just noticed this. I'm going to turn it around, if I may. Hardly.
Later on in our agenda tonight, we're gonna have a funding transfer request to enable the project to upgrade the sound system here in our meeting room. So it's going forward, so
There
can you hear
are.
me now?
Yes, that microphone did it.
Okay. I don't know, I have this one here.
So please, just pull
Okay.
them closer to you.
We'll try to stick it
And-
out
and
till we get the
also
repairs
David,
and
'cause
repairs
you have
done.
the tendency to.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So noted.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else for public comment? Okay, thank you, guys. Thank you, Bettina. Moving on, item 7, Troop 63, Boy Scout Holiday Tree/Green Sale, permission to use the Grove. And also from November 24th to December 24th, placement of signs on town property related to this event. You have the floor, Ted. You can just
All right.
state your name and.
Yep, Ted
Okay.
Pakovitsis. I am the Assistant Scoutmaster for Troop 63. I'm also the chairman of our tree sale committee. We're here again to annually ask permission to use the green behind the old firehouse in the library to set up for our tree sales and resales, and which funds all of our troop activities for the year. It helps the boys earn their money so they can go to summer camp and spend a week up at camp working on advancement and merit badges and everything that they do. It also allows us to buy all of our equipment and supplement all of our trips for the boys to the different locations that we're going to be going throughout the year. They just completed a lot of great trips this year. This past year they completed climbing all the highest peaks in the Northeast. So getting to some of those peaks and getting to some of those mountains was quite a feat, and getting everybody transportation up, camping expenses, that kind of stuff at state parks. So this money that we raise here helps us fund those projects, so the parents don't have to pay extraordinary amounts of money to keep their kids in scouting.
Okay. Is there, I forget, because we usually have a memo, and I don't know what, Charlie sends us a memo with what he needs from us, or nothing? You need nothing from us?
Same.
You're good?
Yep, there should be just the electricity that we get from the hookup that's already there.
Okay, all right.
Over the
That's
last couple of years.
And you have the insurance, is there an insurance policy?
They usually have one on file with us.
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Every year, every March,
Okay,
yeah.
perfect, okay. So, I'll make a motion that we approve the, Boy Scout Holiday Tree Screen Sale at the Grove from November 24th to December 24th.
So moved. Second.
And, can I also add placement of the signs on town property? Do you have locations on that?
Usually it's the intersections, the main roads in town, 63 and 114, Remmen and Race.
I'll add that friendly
kind of
amendment to
stuff.
my
So
motion.
second.
Joe agrees, okay. Any other questions or discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming. Sorry you had to wait a little bit.
No problem.
Thank you. Item 8 is the HGAC by Cooperative Fire Chief Sean Rowland. We'll keep going, he's not here yet. Okay, just remind me to go back to it when he shows up. We skip the public hearing until 7, correct?
Yes.
That's what we have to do
Yeah,
legally?
I think that's when he's coming to.
Okay, so
Yeah.
he'll probably be here for
He'll
that.
be here at 7,
All
yeah.
right, great. Item 10, no, we'll skip that as well, that's the
11's good.
action.
11 is-
Item 11, she's not here yet either. Boy, we're zooming. You ready, Tone?
I'm
You're
ready.
here.
I'm here.
Item 12, the Administrative Officer Director Finance Report.
Okay.
Thank you. First thing is fiscal year-end report.
Thank you. So we have our fiscal year-end report for June 2018. And the report is a actual surplus of $855. So we, if you recall, so the best way to sort of understand the surplus is to look at this sheet here. And so I can walk you through sort of how this fiscal year ended. It sort of gives you a much better idea of. So the top section of the revenues. Top section of the revenues, and so it tells you the final budget for the each category, and then the actual dollars that we took in, and so you can see clearly that our budgeted revenues were about $44,000 over. The actual is $44,000 over budget. Now we had a deficit in property taxes. We've discussed earlier about the assessment appeal that we had to fund, and intergovernmental revenue, which was state grant revenues, were lower, and that was projected at $300,000 originally. So it's actually not quite as bad as we had originally thought it would be. And in department revenues, also receipts, which was several departments were a little lower than we had anticipated. Those were offset by investment income of $146,000 and other revenues of about $300,000. Most of the other revenues, if you recall, is the surplus that we received from Amity from the prior year. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of how we get at revenues. Expenditures, you have all your departments there. And as you can see, each department, their final budget and the actual that the department spent, and the surplus or close to zero for each department. So some of the highlights for you, centered around the bottom one, which was Amity. That was the amount that they lowered their current year budget by because of the issue with special education excess cost grants, which went directly to Amity. They had budgeted that they wouldn't receive them, and they did receive them, so they requested less from us. Another highlight would be the library. There were some vacancies in the library, which they had taken some time to fill, so that created a surplus there. Similar with recreation, there were some staffing vacancies and some efficiencies that John was able to incorporate within their structure, so he was able to save some money there. And those are some of your highlights. So then, if you go down to the bottom, if you have any questions in any department, I'd be happy to go through it with you. At the bottom, the expenditures had a surplus of $373,000. You can see that at the bottom there. So that's your total excess of revenues over expenditures, which means that we had $417,000 extra in cash than we had spent. However,
there's always a however every year.
we designate
That
$400,000 from fund balance
Right.
to offset the budget, which we did not have to use any fund balance, but it comes off the total. So that's how you get your $855. I think it lays it out a little clearer here. Our undesignated fund balance is $5.6 million, and that's about 11.65% of our annual expenditures. Jerry would tell you that's pretty good.
Superb,
Right.
the highest in the state.
So it leaves us protected
We can see this year.
in case there's an issue. State grant cut, major state grant cut, big issue at the school with special ed, or some other major issue. You have some ability to fund, and that's very highly sought after, in the state, and the rating agencies are very cognizant of that issue, particularly in Woodbridge, where we, as you just saw, we have about 92% of our revenues come from residential real estate. So if there's a problem in residential real estate for some reason, we have some protection. So that's the sort of the year end.
Just out of curiosity, the Woodbridge education, I know, ended up on a deficit last year.
Yeah, so we funded $97,000 at the end of the year, which is why it's at zero.
Okay, but the 97 is part of.
It came from, we took it from the Amity. We transferred it from the Amity number, the 142. That would have been higher. That was more like
Into there.
230 or something. Yeah, so we took it from the Amity surplus and moved it into the Board of Ed. Okay.
Any other questions for Tony? Thank you
Okay.
very much. Item 12B is tax refunds, and you have a report from Pat Crisco, tax collector, in your packet. There are no personal property refunds. Real estate refunds are $12,298.31, and motor vehicle refunds are $4,763.24. Total refunds for September are $17,061.55. I'll make a motion that we approve the tax refunds. Is there a second? Thank you. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Item C is funding requests. And line item transfer number 1819-02 in the amount of $16,890. And can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. This is it. This is the good one. So I'll let Tony explain, or maybe Sheila, whoever wants to. You want to take it?
Sure. I could
Okay.
I could just
This is
explain.
the money for the fixing.
So there's $16,890, of which $12,000 of it is for the fix to the town hall issue that we were just discussing. So that's what the majority of it is for. The remainder is for some other ancillary issues that PUA has put together, which is a replacement PC and some Hellview closed caption service. So she'll have, could you explain? It's just a closed caption, just briefly,
Hang on.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
Coming from outside, from behind the camera.
I'm trying to make you guys audible.
Please speak directly into the microphone, it says.
Right. I had submitted
Turned it around.
based on a conversation with the salesman, I had submitted for software closed captioning service with Telview, who made our broadcast server that makes Channel 79 possible.
However, there were costs that were not in the full quote that hiked up the price, and when I talked with the commission about it, they slapped me down. No, they told me, Pua, you're gonna drive yourself crazy trying to make it work, don't get this. So, there's probably other stuff we wanna get, but
Okay.
it won't be the closed captioning now.
Okay,
Okay. Is that good?
that's good.
Thanks.
Thank you. So, any questions for,
Are we getting clip-on microphones that?
I suppose that's one thing you can.
Earpieces.
clip-on microphones was the question.
One of the things we were planning to do was to kind of recycle these microphones, the long neck microphones that are here as part of the system. But we will certainly evaluate if that is not adequate. We can always ask for additional microphones. But once these are sort of reprogrammed and fed into the system correctly and balanced by a sound engineer, we should be A-okay.
So you have to lean in, David, that's.
Just this meeting.
Pages, you do this.
No, no.
Yeah.
What can I say? Okay. So, is there a motion to approve line item transfer number 1819-02 in the amount of $16,890?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. You gotta go?
I'm gonna go.
Okay. Good luck at Amity. Is it
Thanks.
Amity? Yeah, okay. Should we stop and have Sean do his thing prior to the public hearing, or just keep going? We'll keep going.
Why don't we stop at, we'll do the bid part,
Okay,
and then we'll do we could do the HGAC,
okay,
and do the
Good
transfer
idea.
station after.
good idea. Okay, so we just did funding request for the bid waiver, okay, right?
Yep.
Okay, you have in your packet a memorandum from Warren Connors, Public Works Director, to Tony regarding a bid waiver for purchase of treated salt. And hopefully you've all had a chance to read it. He wants to request a bid waiver this year for obtaining 600 tons of bulk Blizzard Wizard at a cost of $70.85 per ton for an initial total of $42,510.
We do this annually.
We do it annually, right?
It's a specialized
I'll let
product
Tony
that
take
you- yeah,
over. From
sure.
Morton Salt, I love the name.
So, you can see the logo here with the salt
Right, I know,
umbrella.
the lady with the salt umbrella
Yeah.
on here. So
So,
cute.
this is something we do every year, and it's a product that is a sole source product. And actually, the price was much higher last year. It was in the mid-80s, and it's 83. Yeah, yeah. So it's actually much cheaper this year, but it does really well, and something we strongly believe in. So.
So I'll make a motion that we vote to approve a bid waiver this year for obtaining 600 tons of bulk Blizzard Wizard at the cost of, for the initial cost of $42,510. Is there a second? Thanks. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And the next one is, let's see, purchase uninterrupted power supply, AKA UPS, an outdoor enclosure for radio system project of the state contract. Can you explain this one?
Sure.
Thank you.
This is for the state project, the radio project that we have for the town simulcast system. And this is for uninterrupted power supplies and outdoor enclosures for some of the tower sites that we need. And so these are off state contract and are critical to housing the equipment that will operate the sites.
Okay, thank you. Someone else like to make a motion?
So moved.
It's in the budget line?
Yes, it's in the budget for the capital project that we,
For the radio.
for the radio project to $2.1 million, right?
Okay, thank you.
It's a purchasing question as opposed to a funding question. Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Did you wanna skip the transfer station?
Yeah, I can
Or
do
is
that
what you
later.
said? All
Yeah.
right. Okay, so we will go back to item 8, which is the HGAC buy cooperative, and we have Fire Chief Roland here, along with Fire Commissioner,
And I have information on it too.
okay,
Yeah.
Alexiadis, sorry, to bring this up. Just gotta get back in my book, sorry, you're jumping all over the place. We have to stop promptly at 7 if we're not finished for the public hearing, so, which you're here as well for, so, thank you. Yeah, take a seat and speak directly into the microphone, please, so everyone can hear you. Thank you.
So we've been working on bid spec for engine 3 to move forward to replace engine 3. As we know, it's in really dire need to be replaced. What we're actually here tonight is they have something called an HGAC contract. It's the Houston Galveston Area Council contract. It's just like buying off a state bid, Connecticut state bid. It's just down in Texas they do this. It's the exact same thing. It's just we want to buy a truck off of the contract where it saves a lot of time and effort into creating it. So it's easier to bid. It's easier on our end. It's easier on their end. And basically we move forward that way. So we're here tonight to see if that's something we want to pursue. Otherwise we have to create, I mean, our bid spec now is, I want to say, about 30 pages. If we spec how we do a regular conventional spec, we're talking probably in the area of about 200 pages for the truck. So it saves a lot of time and effort and money into being able to use the Houston Galveston contract, which everything on the truck has already been bid out and awarded. So basically we're just using their contract to do it, and multiple towns in the state have already used it, and I know Tony's
Yeah, I have checked
reached
with
out.
I have checked with a couple of towns, and basically the Houston Galveston Area Purchasing Cooperative is actually a COG, and it's the Council of Governments for that area that runs this organization. I spoke with them, and so basically they have a series of trucks for each vendor that are constructed. So like a base model, if you will, and you pick a vendor, because there's Rosenbauer, HT, E1, Pierce, right? So you pick the one that they're all bid out. They bid them all, you get the pricing through a bid process, RFP process, and then you pick the one you want, and then there's a base model, and then there's additional
like a la
stuff.
carte.
Yeah, so
Right.
it's like an a la carte thing, and so.
And you know what the prices are because they've already bid them.
Most of it. She said there's some custom things that that may not be, that you have to negotiate. I'm not sure if that's applicable here or not. We'll have to find that out.
Right.
But a lot of it's already priced out. So what you have to do is you go through the process, and then they certify the once you get the price from them, they'll certify it that's in line with the bid, and that's it. You don't have to go through 6 months of putting a
Right.
spec together, and the price is from a nationwide pool, so one would think that the pricing is actually much more competitive than if we went out with one truck. That's sort of the idea.
So, I mean, our understanding is this is analogous to what we've done when the town buys off of the state contract.
Similar, yeah.
And also, we've also gone to sister states
We have.
for things that aren't on the Connecticut state contract. So
We
this
bought
is,
Something
The
for
breathing air
Massachusetts.
compressor.
Yeah,
Who
we
was
did
it
that
for
with the playground
Massachusetts?
equipment. We
Okay.
bought off
Right.
another state, yeah.
We brought
It's
in the
just-
breathing air compressor we bought off
From
the Mass
Massachusetts.
contract.
Right.
this just happens to be a little farther than
Right.
Massachusetts, but
It's just
the
helpful
same
because
concept.
it saves a lot of time and effort
Right.
for a price that might not this would even be a lower price. So that's. And we're not asking. There's no real action here right now because we don't have any pricing. No, we just didn't want to go through the process. You have to join. There's some legwork.
Yeah, I
so
see the program
we-
statutes include complete.
we don't want to go through the legwork if you.
Interlocal contract form.
No one was interested.
You only have to do it once, and
We
then.
wanna take a vote on authorizing them to use this.
As long as there's a consensus that folks are
Yeah,
interested in
okay.
using it, we don't
So
want
I
to go
will
through.
ask the question, is there a consensus from the board that we should go forward with this?
Yeah.
Seems to be beneficial.
Okay.
Anybody have any problems?
So my question is, do we need, or does someone need authorization to join the cooperative, which is, I think is
There's
what
no
we need.
cost.
We actually joined it. We
Yeah.
just,
You already signed the interlocal contract form?
well, there was a lot of legwork in the back end
Yeah.
to sign up for it, but nothing's happened.
Yeah, there's no cost.
Right.
Alright.
There's a cost to.
There's a cost to when we go out to,
Right.
what has to happen is we have to pick a vendor, and then to get the price back from the vendor, there's a cost to do that. It's just, we can't get a cost from this vendor, from this vendor, from this vendor. It's all basically the baseline truck, and then it's the options that we need to put onto the truck. But there is a cost to get that, and I wanna say it's in the area, it's $2,000, yeah.
But then the truck manufacturer credits the $2,000
They credits
in the body
back
truck.
the, when you purchase the truck, they credit that back.
Yeah.
So the state fund process is normally something you go through to define what truck, what the particulars of the truck the apparatus you want is.
That we need, yes.
Right, so this
Basically, we build the
reduces
truck
that.
right up from the ground up,
That's what you do currently.
yes.
And how does this?
This is basically the same, we're telling them what they want, and this is what's available here, and we build it basically from there, but we're taking the options, everything's been already bid out, so like, we need to put a compressed air foam system on this truck, it's already been bid out, so we're just putting that onto the truck, and there's already a set price for that.
So overall, what this does is it eliminates the need to go out to bid.
Correct.
But all your pre-work to define what you want is still gotta be done and still presented and.
Yeah, there's still pre-work, like this is basically the spec that we would use for an HGAC, this is what we came up with, so it's pretty generic. If we were to go out to bid like we did in years past, this spec is usually about 180 to 200 pages long, but we sit down with the truck manufacturer at that point, and then we have to spec out the size frame rails and everything else. With this is we can give them the options that we need, and they just input it into the truck. And basically, that's the number that it comes out with, and it's already been bid out.
They have 4 or 5 or 6, I think I saw it on the list, models, correct?
Right.
There's different models they have, then, you know, they find the one probably that's the closest to one that you're looking for, right?
Correct.
Right.
So I think, it streamlines the process. From
Streamlines
the
it,
ordinary
it
process,
saves
we
a
put
lot of
together
time.
a comprehensive bid that that the various companies can bid on, and we try and cover try to cover all the details in that, and then it goes out to bid. Then there's the time spent on the bid. Then the bids come back, and then Tony and the fire officers spent a lot of time comparing the bids, so then we're sure we've got that they're in compliance. They've complied with the bid spec, and it's apples to apples. And all this takes time and and to a certain extent money to do this. And instead, you've got these are in large part already spec'd out. So we use their specifications combined with with what the department officers have determined are the correct specifications to come up with the right truck at the best price. I think it's the way to go.
I think so too. I'm just curious because ordinarily, for example, if you go with the state contract, one of the things you generally feel pretty comfortable is that you're getting one of the most cost-effective prices. You get a good price. They don't. It's something that I would think they would advertise or at least indicate, but they don't indicate anything about their cost structure at all. And I'm just curious as to how that's what are they saying?
They have costs. I mean, you could look it up. There's costs for certain models, but they may have different needs. You sort of have to then take their base model.
It has to do with what the nature of the truck is. So we're looking for a pumper. We're looking for a 2,250 gallon a minute pump on that. We're looking for a certain size generator. We're looking for a CAF system on it. So when you put all that stuff together, it almost dictates what you need for a cab and chassis and frame rails and everything else that in the past we would have to spec that individually. So
is
it
our
matches
expectation that this would also save us money? I guess that's my simple question.
That's why the only reason why we would do that.
Okay,
That's our expectation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
I mean, I think we can, look at our apparatus that we've spec'd out and bid out, purchased in the past, and sort of get a ballpark idea of how they compare. But it's been a couple of years and prices go up, so it's not going to be, and you can't really get a head-to-head comparison.
It's sort of a good benchmark, though.
But we can get some idea that way. But the idea is to save money. The only way for certain if we save money is if we send it out to bid and then compare the bids to what we could get from them. But that's
defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to clarify.
So did you sign the interlocal contract?
No, we haven't signed anything.
Okay.
All we did was
Okay.
fill out the templates and everything
Okay,
else.
so at some point they'll send you that or that'll have to be completed.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
What is the consensus that
go ahead.
I think it's okay, I will,
Is it to explore using?
What we'll do is then get a price for a truck and then,
Yeah, what basically happens is we can take our spec, we just gotta clean it up a little bit, and as long as you guys are okay with it, we're gonna send it out and
I
get the
think Jerry's
price
asking for
back.
the wording in terms of for the minutes, what
I
the
think it's to
consensus of the board is.
authorize the fire department to use HGAC to.
By cooperative.
To buy, the fire truck that is required.
right.
Or to,
It's actually called the
Receive a quote?
HGAC by
Well,
cooperative.
we're gonna go forward with it to receive a quote on purchase, you know.
Okay,
If you really think the quote is not good, then you don't have to buy it, obviously.
all right.
so I'll ask everybody to.
Our intention is to,
Sorry.
once we get the price,
To move
we'll
forward.
bring it back here.
Right.
And
Oh,
then you
yeah.
approve it.
Process.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you're not approving the truck right now.
No.
What are we gonna compare that price to?
You're,
I mean, that's the whole point of the process.
you don't really compare, because you're already, all the equipment that's going onto the trucks, whether it be the pump, like a Hale Numex pump, that specific piece has already been bid out and the cost is set. So whether we buy, say, a Pierce or an E1 or a Rosenbauer, that pump has already been set at that cost. That makes sense.
And being in this cooperative means it's less expensive.
Cause they're custom
Correct.
trucks, each one is different.
Okay.
So it's not like you can just have a list and say, oh.
And they've
Right.
already put their base models and
They
their
have base
equipment out
models,
to
yeah.
bid,
That's-
and
Right, so you
on a
basically
nationwide
take
basis
the base
with a high
model and then
volume.
you're adding all the options in
Yeah.
that have already
You
been
can go on their website
bid
with the
out and
base
everything
models.
else.
So what we're agreeing to is simply to
Let them to explore this.
Correct.
right, to go, or to do
No.
the same thing we do with the state contract.
Right.
In other words, we're
Exactly.
just saying basically, yes, we could go ahead and use HGAC the way
Right.
we use the state contract.
So you have a comparable price on that piece of equipment, that, say that pump, from another supplier, you can compare apples to apples.
We don't buy a pump separate from the supplier, it's basically,
No, I get that, but when you bid out a truck, you
Yep.
bid out each individual piece, as you said, you do it on.
right, we have a
price for
we
each
have a
item.
spec and they take our
Right.
spec and they input it into
Right.
their thing and that generates a
Right,
number.
so you have a price on, whatever piece of equipment you wanna
No.
add to that.
We don't get a price until we bid it out.
No, but do they give you a price on each piece of equipment, or they give you a price for the total package?
Who, HGAC?
Yes.
I think it works both ways.
both.
So they give you the whole thing and
And then they
then
give you each
it still
piece.
breaks it down.
Yes.
It's gonna break it down because you need to know what you're getting on the
Yeah,
truck.
they'll give you
They're
each
doing
piece.
they're doing basically all the bid work for us. We're
Yeah.
telling them what they need. But we don't wanna specify, say, the frame rails. So if there's 12-inch frame rails needed, we spec out 10. We don't want that. Let engineering for these other firms do that for us.
It's like, for instance, if the base model spec'd with a 1250, I think, is the pump on the base model.
Correct.
So, but you want 2250.
Right.
Okay, so they're gonna say, all right, well, 1250 is included, you want 2250, that's an extra $10,000, whatever it
Correct.
is, I don't know what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, this is a because I want to put it in minutes. right?
Replacement of engine 3.
Yeah, for engine 3, which is a pumper.
Yes.
Okay.
1989 FMC.
Yep.
Okay, so
1989.
I'm sensing
1989.
consensus of the board to go forward.
So 30
Yes.
days.
Yes, David?
This is forward with joining this cooperative.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, all right. So,
We're
have at it.
just so we understand, we're gonna go out and basically take it and we're gonna come back with a price
Correct,
with a number.
that's correct, then
Yes.
you approve the
Okay.
actual.
Well, and in between, there's this interlocal contract form that is gonna need to be executed.
But to get a quote, you need $2,000. So you've gotta come back to submit the quote in order to get the money to submit the quote, because there was a $2,000 number that was mentioned earlier.
Is
Yeah,
that in your
Right,
budget?
we have
budget,
to,
yeah.
we have to,
Okay.
We have that in the budget.
yeah,
Yeah.
we'll have to front that, pay for it, and then get it back.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, don't go.
Thank you.
Don't leave. We have 2 more minutes, I'm gonna skip to item 18.
You can-
Okay, I just wanna get the minutes done.
Oh, okay.
Okay, item 18, minutes of August 8th, 2018. I'll make a motion that we approve them as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Anybody have any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. And I will also make a motion that we acknowledge receipt of the town clerk's report, item 17. Second?
Second.
Thanks, Joe. Any other questions on that? Good. Thank you. Now I can go, right?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Item number 9, which is the public hearing. I have a nice script prepared for me. In accordance with section 4-5 parens B and parens 1 and parens of the charter of the town of Woodbridge, should I?
It's okay, I just wanted to give
This
you
isn't
extra
working
coverage, yeah.
apparently, I don't know. I now call this public hearing to order to receive comments regarding the proposed revisions to the town of Woodbridge ordinances. The legal notice was published in the Woodbridge Town News on Friday, August 31st, 2018. Is there a motion to waive the reading of the legal notice?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. First, we will consider the proposed revisions to Chapter 160 Animals, Article 1 Dog Leashing Requirements and Removal of Dog Litter. Mika Cardozo, Chair of the Ordinance Committee, will describe the purpose of the proposed revision and the proposed new ordinance. Or Jerry, I'm not sure who's going to do it. Okay, Mika will do it. Thank you.
The intent was the committee felt that the previous ordinance was overly restrictive in terms of specifying specifically where dogs could be walked and also where the length, et cetera, of the leashes associated with the dog. The committee felt it was appropriate to be more in line with the other communities in the area and with the state statutes itself, and the language is included.
Thank you. I'm going to ask now if the public has any comments regarding the proposed revision to the ordinance. And there's no public comments. I'm going to ask the clerk if she has has received any additional comments.
Not on the dog leash.
Okay, thank you. I'll go over to my. We do these separately, right? Yes. Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask for a motion to adopt the proposed revision to Chapter 160 Animals, Article 1 Dog Leashing Requirements and Removal of Dog Litter as described in the public hearing.
Do that in number 9. In other words, we go through both of them.
Oh, I go through both of them? Oh,
You
I'm
go through
sorry.
both of them,
Okay.
and then you adopt them in number,
Got it.
or whatever that next number is.
Got it, okay. Next, we will consider the proposed new ordinance, Chapter 382, Taxation, Article 9, Tax Abatement for Fire Department Personnel. Mika Cardoso will again describe for the purpose of the proposed new describe the purpose of the proposed new ordinance.
The intent of the statute of the ordinance here was specifically to offer an incentive to the new and or volunteer firefighters with less tenure, to incent them to join, and we offer this incentive in way of a tax credit. From their perspective, they need to meet specific criteria in order to meet that. That's all specified in the ordinance. Our estimate was somewhere along the lines of, I believe, for the incentive.
How much would it cost? How much were cost total? You mean?
Yes. Yeah.
What did we say about?
It's about
15?
Around $15,000.
$15,000.
Yeah, somewhere in that area.
Great.
And we felt in an effort to retain and incent new firefighters. Again, they do need to meet very specific criteria in order to qualify for the incentive, and it serves the fire department in terms of making sure that there are consistently people who will indeed participate when an emergency call does go out.
Thank you.
So the only thing I'll offer is one of the from the ordinance committee standpoint, we felt that it was important, particularly in light of some of the more recent storms and the fact that there may continue to be these types of storms, that the pressures that are put and the demand that's put on these are increasing, and it becomes more and more important that we have not only we have the good personnel, great personnel, in order to assist. So,
Thank you, Mika. I'm gonna ask if the public has any comments on this ordinance, proposed new ordinance. And hearing none, oh, whoops.
I'm the chairman of the fire commission, and I am in favor of the ordinance. I think that a number of communities have looked at similar concepts to encourage volunteer turnout, so that because you can see from the ordinance the requirements that need to be satisfied in order to be eligible, and with our increasing volume of calls, which are just increased by incredibly over the past few years, in addition to the increased training requirements and increased, I would think it's an important way to encourage participation. So,
Thank you. Has the clerk received any? Oh, someone else, oh, come on up. Thank you. You have to identify yourself, name and address. Thank you.
Felicia Lober, 35 Weppelwide Road. I just wanted to know, how do you measure the success of the program for the tax abatement for the firemen? Is it a percentage increase of the number of firemen that you would get based on this program? And if if the initiative is not successful, then is it capped? Do you stop it and look at some other incentive to try to get able-bodied men and women into to volunteer for the fire department? I didn't know if that was.
It is a percentage increase. Maybe.
So you're looking for there's 50 firemen right now, 50 volunteer firemen. I don't know. 45. So you're looking for 5%? Is that how do you measure it? Is it going to be measured by the?
No, it's in reality it's more than that. Right. It goes beyond just in trying to increase the roles, if you will. Okay. It's also incenting. What you're really trying to do is incent the firefighters who, in addition to trying to get new ones, incent those who are already there to participate more in what's going on. They need to meet, I believe it's 50% of the calls. The criteria that's there.
How it works is right now the minimums are 20% of fire calls.
It's a fire chief, just for reference.
We're increasing it to 25%. On top of that, they also have to have meetings, truck crews, training, and everything else on top of that to be eligible for the abatement. So we're looking for not only to hit their minimums, we're looking to exceed their minimums so we get more participation throughout the year. So just to put it in line, last year we had our busiest year in a long time. We had 522 calls last year, and as of today, we're pushing 600 calls as of January 1st to now, and we still have the rest of September, October, November, and December to go. So it's, when you look at 25% of that, it's quite a bit of calls, and each call, it depends on what it is. Each call could last anywhere between usually around an hour for an average call, and for a more drawn out call, let's say a structure fire, we could be 6, 7, 8 hours on one call. So it's quite a lot of time.
Well, and that's time on the scene, doesn't count the follow-up in headquarters for cleaning up afterwards. But part of what Sean was saying is that there's a certain minimum level of requirements in order to be a member in good standing, and then this provides an increased standard, an increased requirements in order to be eligible for the abatement.
Plus, we're actually seeing a little bit. We're seeing a couple more residents stop by and want to join and participate. So it is a huge time commitment to where it was 20 years ago, just based on what you have to do for training. Just to become Firefighter 1 eligible, the class is 200 hours long. So on top of that, then there's training every month at the firehouse, a few times a month actually, which ends up being another 6 to 8 hours a month on top of basically you give up every Tuesday night because we either have truck crew training or a meeting going on at the firehouse on Tuesday nights.
Felicia, what it's, just to answer your question, as far as the success rate is concerned, obviously it's easy to measure. If we have an idea of a percentage increase, that would be wonderful. But even if there's not, it could still be considered successful if we're able to retain the individuals we have and they're able to grow within the force. Now, one of the other considerations was we do have budgeted dollars associated with the volunteers, which is more of a what's the word I'm looking for, like a retirement type of a benefit to them. not like it's something, but something along those lines. And those obviously are, all those monies apply to a very specific group of individuals who have been there for a period of time. So there is no benefit of those dollars, because I believe there were some comments that I know were made to me that we've already got some money budgeted. But none of that money is really going toward the younger folks or the newer folks, the newer firefighters who have joined in are participating now. And there's a need, if they all participate to the degree where they would be incented, we feel very confident, very comfortable that we have the force that's required to respond appropriately to what's going on. And that's really the reason behind it more so. So from a success standpoint, yes, it can be measured. If we get more, wonderful. If it gets to a point where we need to reconsider, we reconsider in terms of the dollars, et cetera, or how much we budget to it. But the reason is more there's more to it than just trying to get new people in there.
Well, thanks for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Chairman
Thank you.
of the Ordinance Committee did a great job. Thank you. Thanks. Anyone else? Okay. Now I'll ask Mrs. Shaw if there were any additional comments that you received.
Yes, we received an email from Roberta Hudson back on August 10th, and it's concerning everything being many items here. But she said, on tax reduction for volunteer firemen, I support the ordinance if the total of the tax rebates, though lower than comparable towns, combined with the existing longevity incentive program, does not exceed the total of programs provided by other towns. That was her comment.
Thank you.
And then there is a lengthy comment received today, and this is from Andrew Danzig. And he lists many items here, but it really breaks down to, if tax breaks are given to these volunteers, he wonders if it will mean that additional people in town that provide services are volunteering, if they should be getting tax breaks.
Hopefully you all got that today.
We did.
I had a chance to read it. Okay. He does, I might, in bold letters say, I and most residents believe and appreciate the hard work and sacrifice the volunteer firefighters provide through the town. He doesn't question their integrity or devotion. So, okay.
But in answer, just to respond particularly to that of other volunteers, we are blessed to have a very significant and enthusiastic core of volunteers who work in the town, and that's a wonderful thing. In this particular instance, and one of the reasons we consider this particular group specifically, is because the volunteers that most of the other volunteers, and I can't speak to everyone, but are normally done during business hours, and they're done as a result of them having their time available to do that, which is a wonderful thing. In the case of the volunteer firefighters, I know, and I say this primarily because of my experience as a commissioner on the fire department, where I was given I was called when they get called. And to get a call at 2 o'clock in the morning on a 13-degree day or night is a little different than what I do as a volunteer. And it's the demand and the expectation is significantly different. And for these guys to get up, sometimes leave their jobs, leave their families, and go someplace that's really life or death in some instances is a little bit different. So it's one of the reasons that we felt it was appropriate for this group.
We could have some questions on this ordinance. On the last page, it says a volunteer firefighter with a gold badge status. What is a gold badge status?
They have 25 years of service.
Tenure.
They put 25 years of service into the department already.
Okay. So it shall not be eligible for tax abatement unless that firefighter during the immediately preceding calendar year has met the prescribed qualifications as followed. Retired, 40 years of service with all provisions, active, and must attend. Numbers I said. I don't understand that.
Okay, so we're not just because you have 25 years of service, we're not issuing the tax abatement just because you have 25 years of service. You still have to meet the minimums. As a gold badge member, you would still have to meet the minimums to be eligible for the program. Once they have 40 years of service in, which is good, we would issue the tax abatement to them also, as long as they meet the minimum criteria that's required.
are retired individuals going to get this abatement?
If they're, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
If they're a firefighter, volunteer firefighter who meets a particular criteria for going in there, they're eligible for the abatement.
But if they're retired firefighters, they're not active. So my question is this going to be going forward as a legacy for retired firefighters?
You're talking about somebody that has 40 years of service in the
I'm
department.
talking about a guy like Bob Coniff, you know, who's had 100 years of service and is retired, and God bless him, but are these people gonna be eligible, or only people who are actively working?
I guess the public comment.
Bob Coniff, up until about 8 or 9 months ago, was one of the most active individuals in the fire
And I know
department.
he's sick.
So I would be very careful when we when we talk about people. You're talking about an individual that's dedicated his life and has done more than the majority of the volunteers here that would do that.
Back off,
I'd be
because
very, I just want to be very careful when we talk about
I just
individuals
picked his
here.
name because he's somebody I know in the fire department who's been there a long time.
Yes.
I'm not casting aspersions on him, okay?
As
And I
long
know-
as he meets the minimum required for a retired 40-year active, 40-year retired member, yes, he would be eligible for that.
So going forward, after retirement, you would get this abatement?
After you would need 40 years of service or better. There's not many people that have 40 years of service or better within the department, yes. If they retired and they moved away and they're not part of the department anymore, then they would not be eligible for it. So
Basically-
if Bob decides to pick up and go to Vermont, Bob would not be eligible for the tax abatement.
But it's clear, retired with 40 years of service.
Correct.
It's not exactly incentivizing new individuals, but.
Well, it doesn't, there's a benefit to having somebody who's been around
You're
for
having
40
the
years.
experience and knowledge
in
that
any
he
industry.
can
Sean, I'll take
portray
that.
to the younger population. And
No, I'm not.
that is a positive, and that is a great thing to share with the younger membership and show them the tools and how everything
I
works.
think you put your 40 years and you've earned it.
Agreed, but this was originally marketed as an incentive tool.
It
to
is,
get
it
new
is
members in.
it is an incentive. So when we talk about gold badge status, when you hit 25 years, we're asking you to hit 25% of fire calls.
Gentlemen, if I can excuse you for a second, just from a discussion standpoint, it's an incentive to keep firefighters and to get these firefighters to participate as often as possible. That's what it is. As far as how it's marketed, it will indeed target, and it will and should target folks who are newer and don't have tenure because they're not getting another benefit. So
That
if
was
somebody
the
has
intent.
40, that's the
Right.
intent. That was the intent. That's what we voted on. That's why we
Somebody who
went
happens
forward
to
with
be
the
here 40
ordinance.
years is still active or not retired. I mean,
In
retired
any
for 40
industry
years.
I know of, any folks who.
It's not that many.
Who have tenure, folks who are there for a long
Right.
time and bring a benefit, and participation is a very big benefit. I don't see an issue with rewarding an individual in that sense, but really, David, I understand your point. We did initially say it was for younger, I just said it a little while ago.
Right.
So I understand your point
The
completely.
target has moved somewhat.
Right, right. So I apologize for stating it that way without clarifying that one point. Thank you for bringing it up.
Any other comments, questions? Okay. First, I'm gonna ask for a motion to adopt the proposed revision to chapter 160 dash. Okay, I'm gonna close the public hearing. Thank you.
Yeah, asked if there's are there any more?
Any more public comment on these two ordinances? Yep,
Yes, are you discussing the leash law now?
yep. Come on up, we can take a vote, yes, yep. You have to identify yourself and
Yes.
address, thank you.
Michael Broderick, I have multiple addresses. 5 Old Still
Pick
Road
one.
is my primary home address.
Thank you.
I wanted to just, the proposed changes to the leash law, can you just summarize what they are?
I will ask we did it already, but I'll have Mika do it again.
I'm sorry, I missed
It's
it.
okay.
Basically, there was
He's chairman of
the
ordinance.
restriction on the initial, the restriction on the previous ordinance as relates, for example, there was the way it was worded was such that you can't have your dog in your neighbor's yard with you and your neighbor unless it was on a leash, even if your neighbor wanted him not necessarily on the leash. That's an example of what the wording was being interpreted as. We felt that was a bit restrictive. It also specified a lot in regards to town properties and state properties and things of that nature.
Right.
And it also specified a very specific leash length, not shorter, not longer, but
Right.
very specific leash
Leash
length.
length.
So we felt it more appropriate to have the law, our ordinance be consistent with other communities around us, and also let the state statute stand for a lot of what it was
Right.
put there for. So that's the
And
gist.
that does that allow us now to have our dogs off leash on the trails, like?
Only on property that's specified or specifically designated as off-leash areas.
And are any of those areas off leash areas?
Right now, I don't believe we have any until such time as we establish a dog park.
Oh, okay. So, okay, that's what I would like to comment about, because, this is a radical change. This was done by Mrs. Scalatar, when there was not a lot of knowledge. It was not out there that she was doing these changes to the public. That wasn't even publicized that I know about. At least it was poorly publicized, if it was at all. And it's dramatically changed what life is like in Woodbridge. When I've lived here since 1976, and when people moved to Woodbridge, the whole idea was that you could take your dog on these areas. I totally support, by the way, leash laws. Of course, most people here know I'm one of the veterinarians in town. I'm the only dog practice in town. So I don't want to have animals injuring people, etc. I'm very respectful about that aspect. And I think dogs should be on a leash when they're walked along roads for their own safety, for people's safety, etc. But I think it's really an awful change for town residents that we can't have dogs run around on, the land trust. Like, I always hiked with my dogs all my life on the blue trail and the yellow trail near my home off of Coachman's Lane. We never had problems. And I can tell you, being the veterinarian in town, I don't see a lot of problems in town with dog interactions anyways. They're pretty few and far between. And, most people who are responsible, dog owners, if another dog or another person is coming, they get their dog anyways and put it on a leash, even in those settings. And it's just totally changing what our life is like. There wasn't a huge problem. There was no reason to have that restriction in the first place. But I do support having, for safety, dogs on leash law, on roads, walking, when people are walking them around town. But I think when we're back up on West Rock or West Rock Ridge Park, or some of the land trust properties, there was never problems in the first place. Even Alice Newton Park, there are not a lot of problems, or I would know about them, because I'm the person who often sees the dogs that have injuries from dog to dog, problems. There are not a lot of dogs that I've heard about biting people off leash either. So it just seems like it was an unnecessary restriction. I have no idea why it was instituted on people in the first place. I know Mrs. Scalatar was not a very big fan of dogs, but that doesn't give her the right to make it terrible for all of our lives, and for everyone that just expected that was part of our life in town. And I really, really think it's awful what has happened. And we really should go back to where we were, with the amendment being, fine, have a leash law when you're walking your dog on town roads. But in areas where people who have historically, because people are going to let their dogs off the leash anyways. It's happening. I already know it's happening. And by the way, the few instances I've known about have been like, where people came from out of town and their dog was attacked by somebody from out of town. Down in the baseball park field, I know about an incident that took place down near Bradley Road, the research drive, that baseball park there. other than that, I have not seen a lot of problems, and I would see them. So I just don't understand what was the motivation for it in the first place, and why we even have it. And if we want to have it, make it much less restrictive.
So Mika, the motivation was primarily because the ACO in town asked for a leash law. That's where it came from. It wasn't instituted by the first selectman of the board. It was a request by the ACO that this is what we should have.
Based on what reason?
I don't know.
Our intent was obviously to make it less restrictive. That's
I
what we're trying to do.
would-
It's very
Right.
difficult to say you have to have the leash law on, or you can't have it on town property, and but you, it's if it's not on government property, then it's not on government property.
Right.
And so it's, if you don't, as you say, it's something that's appropriate for the road, it extends into the other properties.
Well,
as
maybe we don't need it then, because I think we ought to go back to where we were, because if there weren't a lot of problems, and I'd be glad to talk to the ACO about it, because I'm the one who sees the victims if they're there, and they aren't there.
We have, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
David.
I'd like to take exception to your explanation, Jerry. I had a conversation with Carolyn Barty about this very thing, and she described herself as kind of a reluctant witness who was drawn in to testify for this because Ellen Scalatar wanted it, and this is what she told me. And she told, well, this is what she told me.
Well, that was my understanding too.
I'm not part of that, and I don't know
Okay,
anything
all
about
right,
that.
I'm
but
just saying-
basically, what I will say is that I know the same process that we followed was followed. It went through ordinance the same way it did here, it went through public comment the same way it did here, it went through a public hearing the same way it did there, and it got approved by the Board of Selectmen. I don't even know what the
It
vote
just
was.
it just wasn't well publicized. From my point of view, I knew nothing about it, and all of a sudden it was just imposed. And there should have been a lot more townwide talk, because
This one, or you're talking
about the
other
one that I'm not talking about your revision.
So here we are now with the
And
revision.
that's why I'm making the
We're
comments
here
I
for the
am.
revision.
Because I really think if it means that we can't take our dogs ever off the leash on the Blue Trail, that's just like not what Woodbridge Life was about. And I mean, if we had it for more than 40 years that I've lived here, I mean, I don't understand why we can't have it again. And it's really changed the quality of so many people's lives. And all you're doing is encouraging people to break the law, because people want their dogs. The dog park is a wonderful thing, but the experience of walking your dog by itself in the woods, usually I see nobody, is just one of the Woodbridge experiences that so many of our residents enjoy
My
and
dog
love.
would be in West Haven if I took her off the leash, but add that to that.
Right, and of course, there are some
Not gonna
dogs.
happen.
Yes,
So
there are
you have
lots
to
of
know your
dogs
dog.
that should not be off the
Yeah.
leash ever.
Yeah.
And if you're a good canine owner, which most of our owners are in town, most people know that.
So tonight we're here, I thank you for your comments. Tonight we're here to vote on the proposed ordinance change before us. Going forward, perhaps we can discuss it at another time with the ordinance committee. Again, you're welcome to come to the next meeting and ask us to revisit it again, but
I really think we need to go back to where we were, because I really.
that I would say you should bring to ordinance again, because
Yeah,
can't do anything to change the proposal for tonight.
okay. I just want everyone, because, I know you guys are a
Okay.
thoughtful board, and I wanted to
Okay.
bring this up in
Thank you.
front of you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Anything else from,
Yeah, I was not gonna speak about this ordinance, but I think we need to correct the record. And, Mr. Broderick doesn't know everything that happens with every dog in town, okay? My daughter had 2 incidents on the trails near West Rock, behind the Darling House, with a dog off leash, and the animal control officer felt powerless to do anything about it because of the lack of an ordinance like this. So what Mr. Lober was talking about, we in my family, we have personal experience with that, where my daughter and her dog on leash were attacked by another dog from an irresponsible owner who could not control her animal, walking off leash and out of sight of the owner. So,
Your daughter a Woodbridge resident now?
is my daughter not at the moment, but the offender was a Woodbridge resident.
thank you.
So the trails are open.
Anybody else?
The trails are open. to the public.
That's the reason we have this law now, because of that one incident.
Well, I don't know if it's the same incident you're talking about, but
It
she
is.
had 2.
Okay.
I'll comment on that, I'm sorry. So I will say, I went into ordinance with very much an open mind. And we heard from both folks who were very much in favor of a leash law and folks who were not in favor of a leash law. We conducted ourselves in a way that I thought was appropriate in the sense of identifying and understanding and opening the conversation and the dialogue up for whoever was or was not in favor of, and we heard from both parties. There were a number of people who did come forward and did say they would prefer to have a leash law and they would prefer to have it more restrictive. And that was, so it's not as if there was no one who said that and this was just done out of, and we're acting on that. That's what's here in front of us now, is we felt, yes, we understand that there's those people who who would like to see this ordinance, but we also felt that it was too restrictive, and that's what we're acting on. Just so you know, it has nothing, in my opinion, in terms of our group who got together, had nothing to do with what was previously done. Wasn't aware of all the details on that, not aware of all the details on that, and we really reacted based on what we had in front of us.
Let's go.
Any more people want to comment? Barbara, you raised your hand? Okay.
Barbara Fabiani, 20 Dillon Road. I live near Sperry Road, and I walk Sperry Road frequently, and I frequently see dogs, and I would very much like well-behaved dogs to have freedom at places like Sperry Road. And I recall there were, I don't know if it was a state law, and it was general enough, but I thought it was a useful one in that it said the dog should be under the control of the owner at all times. Okay? And I think that is broad yet specific enough to cover a lot of ground. And so, I mean, I support, a little more freedom for well-behaved dogs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is that it? Now I will close both public hearings.
No, it's one public hearing for two.
I'm sorry. I will close the public hearing for both ordinances. Okay. Now I can ask for the motions. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to ask for a motion to adopt the proposed revision to Chapter 160-Animals, Article 1-Dog Leashing Requirements and Removal of Dog Litter as described in the public hearing. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. I'll now to call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
That's it. There's only 4 of us left. Okay. Thank you. That passes. I now declare the motion carried and the proposed revision is adopted. I will now ask for a motion to adopt a proposed addition to Chapter 382-Taxation- entitled Article 9, Tax Abatement for Fire Department Personnel. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. I will call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you so much. Joe motioned and Mika seconded.
Thank you.
And I will just make a general announcement. The ordinances are effective October 12, 2018, 30 days from the date of adoption, which is this evening. Thank you. That's it. Moving on, where did we end up and start?
You can do number 11.
11, okay. Oh, you guys are here, yay. Hi, okay, sure. Item 11 is Town Green Garden Proposal. Robin Gordon Schaefer and Leslie Martino step up. Thank you very much. Thanks for being patient. Yeah, if you want to, you can stand. The only thing is the microphone has to be able to pick you up. You have to speak into the microphone. So if you can do that while standing, I give you credit. I'm losing my voice. I'm just going to do a little intro if that's okay. We have Robin Gordon Schaefer and Leslie Martino here tonight to tell us about a lovely gift Robin's family would like to make to the town in honor of her family's long history of involvement with the town through many generations now. Robin, I will let you tell us more of those details, but first I'd just like to thank you and your family on behalf of the board and the town. Your offer to contribute this garden to highlight the entryway to the beautiful space that is our town green is a fitting way to kick off our larger project of beautifying the town center. It represents a public-private partnership to keep costs down while making our town center a more welcoming place to linger and enjoy for generations to come. I will note that half the cost of installing the irrigation for this garden will come from my department budget. That's approximately $1,150. That's the correct number. And as we go forward, I'll continue to let you more about the project details. So you guys now take it away. Thank you, Leslie, very much.
All right, well, I don't know if all of you know me, but I'm Robin Gordon Schaefer. Actually, my grandfather, Ted Clark, was the first selectman here from 1948 to 1975, I think, 28 years. And there is a red maple tree right across the way on the beginning of the green that was planted by my uncle, Paul Walgren, to remember Ted. So I often stop there and, my bike rides, etc. So sadly, my mother passed away last December, and she, grew up in the house that I just moved to this summer, the big house at 999 Racebrook Road, where the Clark family settled back in the 1830s, I think, so several generations later, and now it's my turn. And so my siblings and I, we all grew up here, my mother and her sisters, etc., grew up center school, everything. And so we wanted to, do something to memorialize her, but also, just looking at the town green and the tree that was planted for my grandfather, thinking that we could do a bench or, whatever. And then it sort of escalated a little bit, and we reached out to Leslie, who's, will, fill you in on her credentials, etc. But my mother was also a 2-time president of the Garden Club. Was very involved with the church, so it all made sense, to think about doing something here. So anyway, we're very excited to be able to contribute and spearhead this, garden. So I'll let Leslie fill everybody in.
Okay.
On the details.
Everybody should have a copy of this plan that I'll reference. I just wanted to make sure that you all, I know Beth is aware, but in contemplating where to create some sort of garden or some sort of memorial to Arden Gordon, we looked at a lot of different places, and it made sense to pick a place in between Town Hall and in between Center School where it could use some beautification. And there was a link to the tree that Robin is referencing, is this maple here. So this garden literally will be in the shade of this tree, which is, kind of wonderful thing. In planning and developing this plan, we've consulted and gotten feedback and information from just about everybody in town. We've talked to Betsy Quist, we've talked to Terry Gilbertson, we've met with Warren Connor, we've met with a committee of Betsy, Sheila, Beth, and Adam Parsons. And Adam has I've actually mapped this out with spray paint down in the actual site, and Adam and I have reviewed everything. I've met with Youth Services, Woodbridge Rec Department, and the Garden Club, all to get feedback, because this is our gathering place in town and it's used by so many people. We were very cognizant of not trying to disrupt the use, or the multiple uses, but try to enhance the uses themselves. So the design here is to actually serve as a welcoming entrance to this entire green space area, so it kind of funnels you in. The other two things that are highlighted in color here are not really part of the plan, because the plan is for a garden space. Are 2 Coosa dogwoods to link this garden area to the Coosa dogwoods that line the side of the police department center school building. So it ties it all together, and in essence you'll have trees going all the way around, once we filled in the holes, trees going all the way around the green area. And that's the intent, is to make this a more welcoming, inviting space, so that your first look isn't this parking strip that's so convenient but not as aesthetically pleasing as I think this plan would be. We were also cognizant of not trying to disrupt people's various ways to enter this space, because if you block off this entire parking lot, which would be a lovely thing to screen that view, you've also eliminated the entrance to the green area by doing that. So by just having the 2 Coosa trees here and the link, I can give you a copy, Bettina, of it. Okay. You still can enter from any direction. But if you're walking from Town Hall to Center School and using this new walkway, you can stop and you can sit at this bench and have lunch. And that's kind of the intent, that you can stop and smell the roses. And think about Arden. Arden was contributed so much to this town, as her entire family has, but loved flowers. The plan that you see in front of you and the actual really 6 shrubs that are part of this palette are to give interest all seasons, so that you've got evergreens as well as deciduous trees. The spaces that you see will be perennials, so there'll be perennials as well. But this is the guts of it, so that when it's winter time and you look over there, it won't just be some sticks in the ground. And as you drive by, you don't actually have to walk in. The colors of the leaves will all growing season will be different than just green leaves, and a lot of blooming things, as you can see. So we're very excited about this contribution. It comes with maintenance, and that was kind of the caveat for taking on the whole project, is the town can't take on the maintenance of another area, certainly Adam can't. The garden club is pretty strapped at this point in terms of what they are able to do. They've maintained the gardens that they've always maintained, but taking this on as a project is not within their purview at this time, or their abilities at this time. So Robin's family is taking on that cost as well. We're splitting the cost of the irrigation, so Beth referenced a $1,100 amount, but the total amount is twice that, and Robin is taking on that as well. And I think we kind of struck a deal, Sheila, for one of the trees, and the hope being that another tree could come with the contributions by town folks as they donate the benches. That a tree possibility is within that as well. So the idea is to make it as easy as possible for you all to accept this gift, to enjoy it. Robin also, she didn't mention, but is not looking for a huge sign in front saying welcome to Arden's Garden, but is looking for a plaque. If you've walked past Ted's tree, it's a very small but nice plaque that recognizes his service. There would also be something similar at the entrance on one of these. Her family is also considering the first 2 benches in the front as well to be dedicated to Arden. So it's a little bit of an explanation. The size of it is about 33 feet by 20 across in each of these sections. The microgrid runs right through here, so we're not touching that and messing with that. And the trees are in between the 2 light posts, so should not obscure any light made available at nighttime, with people being able to see where they're going. So with that, I don't know if you have any questions.
Any questions?
Go for it. Yeah, I have a few. You've obviously thought about the food trucks for the various festivals. There's room for them to get in there?
Yes.
There is, okay.
Yeah.
Are you married to the idea of Coosa Dogwoods?
I mean, I think that's a design decision, and I think that the whole idea is to link it with what's already there, and those Cousas are lovely, and it ties into the whole. You could make a kind of a hodgepodge of something else.
We have Coosa Dogwoods there now?
Yes. Coosa Dogwoods line the entire side of that brick wall of Center School of the police department, and they're absolutely gorgeous. So this really links that area. You're just hopping visually from here to here.
Yeah, I understand. Okay.
Anything else?
I think they're pretty.
Okay.
As far as, I'm sorry, the other trees are concerned, that's all to be done. That's not, those aren't part of it right now, correct?
No, the existing trees and the trees that have been recently removed are not part of this plan. This plan truly was looking at what are we adding to that's not already there. And I know there's an overall plan that Warren and Adam have talked about, and I know you all have talked about in terms of replacement of the trees that have had to been removed. So these are just trees that have never existed before in this spot.
And I assume the design is consistent with what you've done in front of and on the side of the library. The garden club, I think, maintains that as far as, because that's wonderful.
I
like you said,
designed the
every
circular
season.
portion of that, and the
Right.
intent there was to keep it as simple as possible, but have continual bloom.
It works.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you have a time course for this?
We were waiting to get official word from you all.
Okay.
And then our hope is to get it installed during the month of October, which is a good time for planting shrubs. There are things that would have to happen. The irrigation work has to be done. We have to call UI, make sure there's no lines, and then coordinate
stuff, right?
with, coordinated with, Adam will coordinate those two pieces because it's town property. And then, once you say that you accept this gift, then I can start rounding up the appropriate shrub, plant material so that it's ready to go. Tomorrow I would go over and dig some holes in the ground and get the soil tested so that we know how to amend the soil in those spots.
But Betsy's been working on a lot of beautification, so I kind of feel like deferring to you in terms of you're all on board and your opinion matters.
Definitely, yeah, and this is part of the draft plan was to include, this idea came up around the same time as the idea of the beautification plan, and so they dovetailed really nicely together.
So we don't really have an action per se, but I think I will ask for consensus to go forward with this, and I think me personally said, have at it. It's wonderful. Anyone else agree? Okay.
I agree.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Leslie for doing really all the work.
Robin's family.
Thank you very, very much.
We'll look
When it-
forward
when
to
it's all done,
enjoying
we'll
it.
do something
Everybody can
fun,
go and
special.
concerts and t-ball and place to sit and have lunch.
Yeah.
So, great.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Do
Leslie.
we have to vote on it?
No,
Is there no monies involved?
they're paying for it.
Well, there's $1,100 involved
It's in the budget, yeah,
Budget.
in your budget.
yeah.
Board
It's in hers.
Selectmen budget.
It's actually your budget too.
We're still on
That's
television.
discretionary.
Okay.
It is.
Thank you. Okay. Now, where do we leave off? Transfer station report, is that what's next?
Yep.
Okay. Gotta keep me honest here. Thank you so much. Okay, item 12E, the
We're
transfer
losing numbers
station
as we
report.
go here.
Is he leaving too? Wait.
One,
Okay.
two, three, lose a quorum.
We have
Joe's
3.
there.
Is that a quorum?
Joe is there.
No, I said if Joel leaves, you lose.
Oh,
Joe's here. He was just asking.
okay. He was talking about leaving.
So then
Maybe
if
we
he's gonna
should
leave, you
find
should
out.
do anything that requires a vote,
Yep.
like a 15.
Joe, are you here for a while longer? In case we have to vote on things, are you gonna?
I
You're
should
here?
have left an hour ago, but that's all right. But
Okay,
we will have a Board of Selectmen tree,
thank you.
donated individually.
All right, I like that.
It's a great idea.
Okay. Okay, so we'll return to the agenda of 12B Transfer Station Report, and I will ask Tony to take it away.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, you have a, information in your,
Yeah, you got, so Bettina, you gotta hear this one.
okay. So, I've asked, Betsy, Yagla and Kelly to, Kelly Hamill in our Public Works Department, to do a survey of other transfer stations and take a look at our operations and how we can provide recommendations to improve efficiency at our transfer station. I just know by attending, I attend the regional recycling and solid waste meetings, and I just know by speaking to other towns that we can be much more efficient in the way we operate. And when I say efficiency, I mean mostly to do with cost structure and how we charge fees, and not necessarily the employees. The employees do a great job, and we get a lot of positive comments about the employees. I just want to. So this is mostly about cost structure and the business model that we use. So, so did a survey of the several towns. And based on the survey results and the analysis that we put forward, the towns, I'll just say the recommendation up front that the town begin charging haulers by weight, that we charge residents who drop off bulky waste by weight. Currently we charge by volume, and but we have to pay by weight. And we experiment with some changes of our hours of operation. So I don't want to go through the whole report here, but I could just say that based on our survey of 25 different towns, there are a number of ways Most towns that we surveyed, and there's a chart attached here, most towns that we surveyed don't even let haulers, the way we operate is the haulers pick up. You can either bring your trash to the transfer station, or the haulers private haulers pick up that the residents contract with. And most towns don't even allow private haulers at their transfer station. So we have a cost to get rid of the solid waste, which is about $230,000 a year. The towns that do allow private haulers at their transfer station, in the chart here you can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 of them, 5 of them, charge $85, $90 a ton for the private haulers to dispose of waste. We don't charge at all for the haulers to dispose of waste. So Orange, for example, charges $98 a ton. So we take in an estimated $1,400, was it, Betsy? So 1,400 tons rather. So that would be $140,000 if we charge that much. So we are currently, in order to accomplish this task, we have to install a scale. Now there is, because what happens is you weigh the vehicles when they come in, then they dump, then you weigh them on the way out, and the difference is what you would charge. So if we were to do this, we have to go forward and purchase a scale. We have to go out to bid for a scale, change some compactors. The first real decision is, do we want to continue to accept solid garbage or municipal solid waste at our transfer station? And so that's sort of the first big question. And the consensus we've discovered is that we still would like to accept waste at our transfer station.
Rather than closing it.
Rather than either closing it or just taking recycling.
Right.
Some places just take recycling and don't take solid waste at all. So for the town I live in, for instance, they don't take solid waste garbage at our transfer station. If you want to do it, you have to contract with a private hauler and they have to take it somewhere else. And so, yeah, just so in a situation like that, there would be no tip fee charge in your budget for $250,000 because there's no solid waste at your transfer station. But the negative part of that is residents can't dispose of their garbage at the transfer station. So it's pretty involved.
I got a few phone calls from residents complaining about, you're not going to close the transfer station.
Right. I mean, we're not suggesting that,
Right.
but
So
that's just a
that
range
is
of
not being
what other
suggested.
towns do.
Right.
I mean, if you had a chance to, it's not a lot of details here, so we're suggesting that we move forward and put in a scale and start charging haulers by weight, and that could possibly result in an increase to residents who use private haulers. It could not. I could tell you that, Betsy, do you have that information on the other towns?
This?
This was last fiscal year, but in Fairfield, they paid $41 per month for weekly trash and recycling pickup. Woodbridge residents, I'm told, pay $40.50 a month.
Now keep in mind, Fairfield charges $87 a ton to the hauler to get rid of the garbage. We don't charge anything.
Of course, there are potentially other differences. We have much longer driveways.
There's
so there are a
differences.
lot of different
It's not a
factors
one
that
to
would
one-
go
yeah,
into
right,
play.
yeah. Just
And in Orange, they pay $30 a month for trash pickup.
without recycling.
Correct.
Yeah.
And Orange charges $98 a ton.
Didn't we already approve scale money for the scale?
Yeah, we've approved the money for the scale already, but it's sort of a major sort of endeavor. If we're going to start charging the haulers, we just want to make sure everybody was on board with it. We're not at that point yet because we have to go out to bid for a scale. We have to sort of roll this out over a period of months. So if you have any other questions, you can certainly get back to us. If you want to,
Well, we're charging the haulers now,
we
just charging
we charge them $100 a truck per year.
$100 per truck per year, period.
And that's in ordinance.
That's
Best
it.
deal in the country.
So how long would it take us, do you think, I'm sure you ran the numbers, to recoup the cost of the scales?
Oh, annually, if we charged $100 about $130,000 a year. We'd recoup the scale in about a half a year. Yeah, 6 months, roughly.
So if you approve this, you would probably need to do an ordinance.
There's a couple other benefits to having the scale. The first is we could weigh the garbage when it leaves the transfer station, and then that weight ticket should match the weight ticket when it arrives in Bridgeport, to make sure that no other weight of the trash sort
So
of
I've got added on,
gets added
on
to
the road.
Right. Not that we suspect that's happening, but it's a good audit check. And the other thing is when folks come in to dispose of bulky waste, we sort of charge by volume, which is sort of how much you're bringing in on a truck.
Truckload or whatever.
So but we pay by weight, so we pay a lot more for a truckload of shingles than we do for furniture, which has a lot of air. So that would sort of make it more equitable that people who drop off bulky waste, we'd be able to more accurately charge for what we pay.
So a resident dropping off, for example, their brush or something along those lines, which I know they do now. No, I
There
think
would
they
be no
charge
charge,
like 10,
yeah.
there would be no charge, but, or
There-
let's
we
just
didn't
say
co- we-
furniture.
Furniture, okay, for example, yeah.
Furniture, they would go on the scale and do the same way
Correct.
that everybody else does.
That's
and it's
correct.
per ton.
Yeah,
But not for regular household
Garbage,
waste.
right.
Yes.
right. The regular household garbage that this, we're not suggesting you charge for.
If you bring it, your refrigerators and everything.
So anyone who's got,
Yeah,
rid
bring
of a
it
lot of
yourself.
stuff,
Right.
really start.
But the thing is, we're not in line with other surrounding towns, so our suspicion is
Might,
if we're not charging and other towns are charging $100 a ton, what does that tell you?
they're coming here.
Right.
Let's deal
My
with that.
input would be, how do we make it happen faster?
So we'll start to roll this out, and we'll hopefully have the probably by the first of the year. By the time we go out to bid for the scale, it would probably get installed in the spring, I'm guessing.
Let's do it.
And then definitely for next budget, but we hope to have it done sooner. And the only other thing we discussed was we noticed in our survey, a lot of transfer stations are, some are open 3 days, some are open 2 days, some are open different, what would be, is it best to still open for 5 days for 8 hours a day, or however it is, that it's 8:30 to 3, or
Is there any input?
Are-
I'm sorry.
yeah, are there any days that are maybe very slow, that maybe the employees could do other things, could help the
If
public
you're
works?
gonna have commercial haulers dumping their trash, they pick up every day, don't they?
Yeah, so we're not
Yeah.
suggesting you close every day, we'll close any days.
They open every
Keep
day.
the same
Yeah.
schedule.
But we were, that's something for you to think about. We can keep the same schedule.
Maybe a
Kind
half
of
a day on a
defer
quiet day
to
or
the
something
folks who are
like
out there
that.
and see if
So
there's
we
any
asked the
indication.
department.
Yeah.
We asked the department, and their suggestion was originally, Betsy, what was their original suggestion?
I think it was to do 2 full days and 3 half days, and we thought maybe we'd flip it and do 3 full days and 2 half days. And then the department would be able to reallocate staff time to do other
But you could,
projects.
Well,
that's just a
if you're
suggestion.
gonna put in scales, you're gonna charge haulers, you're gonna have an income from this. If you cut down on the access, then you lose part of that income. So,
Okay, we don't have to change the hours. It was just
I'm just
something that
saying,
came up from the,
Leave it,
Well, maybe
there are
we
some
make-
Leave the
times-
hours,
yeah.
yeah.
days.
I
And
would
then
leave the hours
afterwards-
because now you're getting income from that.
with the intent of maybe
People are
measuring
used
it
to
in a
it.
year from now
We
after we've
could.
had the scale and then
That's
see
fair.
if,
yeah, we can do that. We can measure the activity, and then we can report it back.
Right.
Now, ordinance has currently consideration for, or changes on the ordinance from a recycling standpoint, trash and recycling standpoint. And that has to do with pushing, I don't know if there's a time constraint on that's the only consideration that I have.
We need to dovetail these initiatives.
Understood, but I don't know if we need
His
to
ordinance
accelerate
right
this
now.
one or slow down the other one.
Right.
That's,
Right.
cause we were almost ready to move forward on the other
Right.
one. I'm just wondering if we need to slow that one down or.
Kind of pause.
To hear this.
Okay.
Right.
So,
To see
but
if there's
there's
any
no
interest in
issue,
this.
I guess there's no concern, I guess, Jerry, is what I'm.
There's a little concern that the state wants us to comply.
Right, that's my
But
concern.
I don't
By
think
the
it's,
end of the year.
but I think
By
we
the
have
end of
some
the
time.
year?
By the end of the year.
Which is
Okay.
where this kind of still fits your
Yeah.
schedule.
Okay.
Fair enough, Thank you.
Because the time-consuming part here is not necessarily putting the language in the ordinance, it's the physical part of,
That's, yeah.
you know, getting the bids together for the scale, going out to bid, getting them back.
We have to get all the numbers and everything
Right.
in there so we can put the ordinance together, because
Right.
it makes sense to do them together.
And then the communication around that, both through ordinance and then when we roll it out.
Right.
Okay.
A lot of communication
Right.
effort we have to do,
Right.
public information. As the reporter comes back in the
Nice.
room. We'll fill you in.
Sandy, you guys run
Yeah,
the committee.
and Joe and Sandy were, Sandy Stein were helpful, very helpful in putting this together, so we appreciate that.
We had to have input from boards of selectmen,
Yeah.
and so I appreciate that, and Betsy too,
Yeah.
getting all this data. So, thank you. Oh, okay. So thank you. Item 13, are we there? Am I right on numbers here? Great. Assistant Administrative Officer's report, Betsy.
So one thing I wanted to talk to you about has been touched on a lot tonight, the beautification plan. I will be sharing it with several relevant boards and commissions this month and next month and seeking feedback on the plan. And my goal is to come back to you in November with all of that feedback synthesized into something that you can, you know, see all of the thoughts and how to modify the plan and then start moving forward with it. And as Leslie mentioned earlier, with the trees that have been removed at Fitzgerald on Center Road, the tree at the library that Beth referenced earlier today, and there were a few diseased trees
We didn't
over.
want to do it. We had to do it,
Yes.
unfortunately.
The trees over on the green that were diseased and removed, that is likely to be folded in as part of the beautification plan, and ideally we'll be able to find willing donors and grants to make many of the things on the plan happen without having an impact on the town budget. Excuse me. The other thing I wanted to mention was that Fallapalooza is coming together swimmingly. We've got this lovely flyer that the JCC created for us, and we have 2 donors who will be helping to get the word out. So Joyce Printers will be printing the flyers and posters for us, and New England Brewing will be paying for an ad to go in the Woodbridge Town News to help spread the word about the many events that will be happening in October. Excuse me. And the committee that's putting this together has been doing a really great job. They'll be meeting next week. I'm sure they'll discuss whether or not to include the dog park event as part of the month-long series. And this kind of lines up with Beth's goals for the beautification plan in terms of bringing residents together, creating opportunities for people to interact, and really celebrating the town. That's it.
Item 14, Communication Director and Grant Writers Report. Sheila.
I have passed out today a little bit of information about the Sustainable CT. We have submitted for certification. That deadline came, and we were able to get in. As you can see from what I've handed you, we've got items in every one of the categories, and we have more than the 200 points that are required. Now we just have to wait and see if we are awarded. If we get 200 points, we will be certified as a bronze community. We'll be finding out sometime in October, so we're going to keep our fingers crossed. In the meantime, we also, the front page of your little packet is, we submitted, they began a photo contest to highlight sustainable events in communities, and we were awarded with Photo of the Month for August, and our photo was featured on Sustainable CT's website. So that's talking a little bit about getting those items checked into that, and I just want to say that the Sustainability Committee did a great job of helping us kind of focus and make sure we were hitting all of the items, and those folks that are members of that committee really pitched in to get us over that finish line. So that was really a tremendous effort on a brand new ad hoc committee. Then turning towards next year, once we're done with year 1, we want to look at year 2. So the Sustainability Committee talked about their major initiatives, and I'm just going to give you 3 of their top ones. The idea is if you've earned 200 points one year, you need to get 400 points for the following year to increase your certification. So it's a big bar, and it raised up immediately as soon as we met the first one. So the Sustainability Committee wants to continue their focus on energy use in town buildings. part of that was getting the UI's portfolio manager software to work with all the updated information. So we were able to put in a lot of information about Beecher Road School, that energy renovation project there. We're able now to see some performance indicators with that building, as well as the library, the town hall, the firehouse. Amity High School is involved in it as well because it's in Woodbridge. So we're not resting on our laurels. There's been a lot of projects, and we are getting a lot of energy reductions, but there's more to do, and so the committee wants to look at that. They also opened up some exploration of transportation. Complete Streets is a model that's used to help you consider your transportation options for your residents, do some enhancements like bicycle lanes, helping people get transportation, mass transit down in especially our business district. So we began a Complete Streets team, and you'll hear more about that as we go. And then lastly, the other main focus, they did a composting initiative at Beecher. That's one of the waste reduction strategies that is anticipated in sustainable communities, and it dovetails nicely with the recycling and what's being termed in Connecticut as a looming waste crisis. We can increase recycling, and we can try to decrease solid waste and the tipping fees that go along with that and the cost to the municipality, because it's getting more and more expensive. So one of those ways is to divert things into composting. That's very heavy material that otherwise would end up in your solid waste stream. So as we roll out changes to what's going to happen at the transfer station, the Sustainability Committee wants to focus on communication to homeowners, to everyone in town, so that they understand more about this waste crisis, why it's important, and how they can pitch in. So you'll hear more about that. And then lastly, a kind of overarching effort that's going to happen there is we're going to take a look at providing effective community communication. We heard a few times tonight at the meeting about the importance of communication around the ordinance committee and getting that information out. And we also heard about letting people know about the good things that we're doing, such as the garden. So you all know that we've been sending out some new communication vehicles. We send out an email about the Board of Selectmen happenings each month. What we're going to do, though, is take a look through the Sustainability Initiative. We're going to do a communication audit, and then we're going to do a little gap analysis and try to find out which communities we are targeting, where our messages are going, making sure they're getting through. So those are all some of the year 2 initiatives that we'll be working on, and a lot of it will go back to communications. And I'll welcome your input as we go along with that, because I know you guys have strong feelings about communications as well. That's it.
Great, thank you. Item 15, Personnel Committee's report.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. The Personnel Committee met earlier, and the library has in their budget a office assistant and administrative assistant that does financial work, invoices, purchase orders, payroll. It's sort of the library's receipts and a number of things. That the position is now vacant. The person left. It's budgeted for about $18,500 a year, and so we've been encouraging departments to do more with less and to be more efficient and to to try to help the town reduce its budget. And so, speaking with Eric, he has recommended and would like to. And speaking with Lynn, have Sarah do most of the financial inputting and paperwork that this former position did. So Lynn is currently our assistant library director, and so Lynn would take on all that responsibility. So the library can essentially eliminate that position from their budget. So in order to compensate Lynn for that, Personnel Committee voted to increase her salary by $4,000. So we would save $18,500. She would be increased by $4,000, and she would take on all those responsibilities.
Which she's agreed to do.
Yes.
And anybody have any questions of Tony? Okay. Personnel Committee is me and David and Terry Schatz as well.
Yes.
She was sitting in as well. So we met at 4 o'clock and made the motion. So I guess it's now up to the Board of Selectmen to approve this from the
Correct.
Personnel
Yep.
Committee. The Personnel Committee did vote unanimously to proceed with
recommend,
this. So I will make the motion that we assign the duties of library office assistant. Is that the position name?
Yeah, I
Not
think they actually
manager.
call it administrative assistant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. To Lynn Sarah for an additional, $4,000 added to her salary effective tomorrow, 9/13/2018. And I guess Lynn has agreed to do that,
Yeah.
to do this.
Mhm.
Doing it a little bit on and off since this person left, so.
She's been doing
So-
it since the person left.
And that
Right.
position, the other position goes away.
Correct.
Right. So we need a second, thank you. Anybody
Second.
have any questions? Okay. Okay, I'll call the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That's it for personnel at this point. Whew, town council's report.
No,
Yeah,
nothing.
dab it,
Nothing.
do.
No report.
Thank you. Okay, thank
Everybody
you.
happy, huh?
We did the town, we did the minutes and we did see, I'm glad I went over those and did them. Okay. Now we have several resignations. We've gotten these over the last month or so, but put them all together. We did it. Yep.
I was asleep, wasn't I?
I did it while we were killing time before 7 o'clock. I had 2 minutes and got 2 things done. They gotta be fast here.
I'm having a little stroke there.
It's okay. We have a resignation from Susan Jacobs for the Board of Finance. Her letter of resignation is in the packet. We have a, letter of resignation from Elizabeth March from the Library Commission. A letter from, an email, from Spencer Rubin resigning from Zoning Board of Appeals. And finally, John Volti from the Woodbridge Board of Education. I will note that Spencer and John moved out of town, so they could no longer serve. So we will accept those resignations with regret. If anybody has any questions on those, we go forward. Okay, that's item 19. Now, to fill the vacancies, we have some, first of all, the Board of Finance to June 30th, 2021. Mika, do you have a nomination?
I do. I'd like to nominate Tom Handler for the Board of Finance position that is available, that is open. Tom has been a Woodbridge resident for lifelong Woodbridge residents, except for his college years. He was also an elected Woodbridge Board of Education member, where he was chair of the Finance Committee. And in addition to a pretty good junior soccer coach
Okay.
during the time that I've known him. But he has a detailed understanding of the Woodbridge the budget, so the Beecher budget. So he's certainly a very qualified candidate.
Wonderful.
Second.
His CV is, all the CVs for these folks are in the, resumes are in the
The
packet.
resumes are in the package
Right,
that we
right.
received.
And Joe has seconded. Are there any other nominations? Nope, hearing none. Motion to approve Tom Handler to the Board of Finance appointment to June 30th, 2021 has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Next is Economic Development Commission to June 30th, 2021. You have in your packet a, what do we got? We got a quick note from Wayne Luciani. And we could have,
I would like to nominate
sorry,
Wayne
I should have
Luciani.
done that. I'm sorry, I'm just
Wayne
tired.
Luciani for the Economic Development Commission position. Also a lifelong resident who currently operates the Woodbridge Family Farm on Lawrence Street, which has been there for generations. So needless to say, it brings a significant amount of agricultural insight to the group, which I think is a very important thing at this point.
Came out of the agricultural firms forum we had, that it was important to get farmers on these important boards and commissions, so thank you.
So I'd like to make that nomination.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Joe. Any other nominations?
This is for what position?
This is for Economic Development.
Commission. Okay. No other nominations? Okay. All in favor of Wayne Luciani for the Economic Development Commission to June 30th, 2021?
Aye.
All done.
Do we have this information in the
There's a note about him, and Mika kind of expounded a little bit on his,
It came
Okay.
separately, I think it's in that
Right,
separate
got it.
file.
yeah,
Okay.
oh, it might be in your pile, sorry.
It might be in the pile of stuff that
Yeah.
we were given. In
Right.
fact, you want to pass that down to Joe?
No, that's right, I have it, don't worry about it.
Okay. Item 20C is the Library Commission to June 30th, 2019. Are there any nominations? I did it right this time.
I'd like to nominate Andy Duquette for the Library Commission position that's open. Andy's, her children currently attend Beecher Road School, and she has connections with a lot of the parents, the younger children in school, and her family are very avid library people, and she's offered a number of very innovative ideas and creative type things for the library, so I'd like to nominate her.
Great, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any other nominations? Okay, all in favor of Andy Doucette for the Library Commission
Aye.
to June 30th, 2019? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, okay. You guys are fast. Next one is Town Plan and Zoning Alternate
I'd like-
to June 30th, 2019. Are there any nominations?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Chris Sorensen, a familiar name and lifelong resident also of Woodbridge. He's also former elected selectman, as well as a local businessman in terms of operating a school bus company, and he runs the farm. I believe it's Mary Mountain Farm.
Yeah,
Thank you very
on
much.
Amity Road, everybody knows it.
And so I'd like to. So he also will bring some agricultural insight to TPZ, which I think at this point again is very important. And so.
Second.
Thank you. Any other nominations? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Chris Sorensen approved for Town Plan and Zoning Alternate to June 30th, 2019. Thank you. And Woodbridge Board of Education, John Bolte is moving out of town unfortunately, so we have are there any nominations for the Woodbridge Board of Ed to June 30th, 2019?
I'd like to nominate Todd Jokel for the Woodbridge Board of Education position. He's had a very deep experience in higher education. He's currently the Dean of Lyme College at UNH, and his children attend Beecher Road School. And he's got very sharp interest in the position, so I think he'll serve us well.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other nominations? Thank you. All in favor of Todd Jokel on the Woodbridge Board of Ed to serve till June 30th, 2019?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And last but not least, we have a Zoning Board of Appeals opening to June 30th, 2019. That was Spencer Rubin's position. He's moved out of town. Are there any nominations?
I have a nomination. I have Dr. Robert Wisnia. He's a 37-year resident of town of Woodbridge. 3 children went to the Amity school system.
You don't have his, do you have?
It's coming around.
It's going around.
Oh, David's got them all.
All right, okay. No, they just stopped here. Okay. He's a graduate of Yale University. He's a practicing ophthalmologist. He was on the, he was past president of the Board of Governors of the NYU School of Medicine and is a fellow of the Ezra Stiles College at Yale. He's a member of the Republican Town Committee. He has extensive experience with the Woodbridge zoning and wetlands regulations. I'd like to put him up for that position.
Thank you. I will second that nomination. Are there any other nominations? All in favor of Robert Wisnia to serve on Zoning Board of Appeals to June 30th, 2019?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And now, item 21. Let's see. Sorry, I lost pages here. We had listed this as an executive session pursuant to section 1-200 for InSite Development Group to come and expound on his proposal for the development of the country club property. And after Tony and I met with you yesterday, we thought rather we should just put it in the open. If for some reason someone asks a question that appears to be executive session material, jury's gonna pay clear attention and say, no, it has to go in executive session. But I think it's important for the public to continue to be informed. So you're here, one member, and Bettina, so it's going to be an open session, not executive session. So Poole, you have to stay and continue taping. Thank you so much. With that, I will invite up Brian St. Pierre to answer some further questions of the board and also give us some further data on his proposal. After we had our last meeting, there were some questions, so we've given you those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Everybody, Brian St. Pierre, and I guess I'll let you guys kind of dictate, you know, what the additional questions are going to be. I'll kind of leave it with that. Happy to answer any questions, and I brought some additional data that we'll probably get to, but from what I understand, a lot of the questions from the board really had to do with the quality and the you know, the style of the development, and you know, the willingness and wanting this to have a well-built house, a well-built clubhouse, you know, not go with the cheaply made, you know, spec houses. So what I did is put a list together for you of what a standard house would be. As I mentioned in the last presentation, there will obviously be add-ons and additions that homeowners can add to these, but these would be the standards. You know, if we built a house and somebody wanted to buy it, this would be in each one of the houses. And
excuse me, can we just summarize the project? I mean, how much money for the property? I know it was presented before.
Sure.
The conversion of the Woodbridge Country Club, just, you know, just highlights, 4 points or what have you. Who would do that for us?
Brian could do that. Do you wanna do it now, or you wanna finish this first? It's up to you.
That's fine. I'm sure this will answer a lot of the questions that I'm
Okay.
sure the board has. So very quickly, Joe, it's our offer is to buy the entire property of roughly 150 acres from the town of Woodbridge. It's the former country club property. Our offer is to purchase it for $5.1 million. Within that project, we will be doing an 18-hole golf course on the current property, and using roughly 40 acres for a 100-house, 55 and older community. And also, along with the clubhouse, along with the golf course, renovate the clubhouse, the pool, and keep that open to the public.
Wasn't there another building you were going to construct too?
The additional building would be a private clubhouse just for the residents of the 55 and older, a smaller meeting room, you know, gym sort of thing, just for the residents of the 55 and older community.
Just to be clear, you weren't going to keep all 150 acres. You said that you would be willing to deed it back to the town.
Correct. So the golf course what I would call the golf course property, where the 18 holes of golf course would be donated back to the town to be held in conservation or town-owned property at that point, where, you know, no additional building could be constructed without the same process we're going through now.
How many acres is it?
It's roughly 100 acres. And Joe, that will come with when we do the professional survey and lay out, obviously, all the houses and the roads and so on and so forth.
The parcel across the street bordering the Merrick Parkway along Woodfield Road, is that included in your budget?
That is included.
That is included.
That is included.
Do you have plans for that?
That will be probably the driving range and additional parking for the clubhouse.
That's more than 150 acres. That's about 180
About
acres.
159, isn't it?
No, I think there's 30 acres across the street.
I think it was. I think the 150. I think it was 158 or 159, and that included the piece across. But
That's the number I remember, 157.
I wanted to say 158 or somewhere around there, and that did include, because I remember it being somewhere in the 130 or 140, and then finding out about the piece across the street.
And you're moving the cell tower.
Moving the cell, and Dave, also the cell tower will go on the very end of that piece. And I think that's actually the highest spot on that piece also, so the cell tower will actually be higher up.
So, okay, go ahead.
No, great.
Okay. So 40 acres of this, as I understand it, is for the over 55 housing, correct? And it's up where the tennis courts are now, in that area, sort of?
So it would, I apologize,
we don't
I
have
didn't
the
bring the
map,
map
I'm
with
sorry,
me.
I know.
So it would start roughly where the tennis courts are currently now, and stretch down Woodfield towards Ansonia Road.
Yep.
Right.
So it would be that almost like a pie-shaped area over there.
But no building along Ansonia Road, the biggest part,
No,
Johnson Road,
the only thing
or
on Ansonia Road would be
Woodfield.
the secondary entrance to get into the 55 and older community, which, you know, a small sign and an entrance.
Okay. Just clarify again the 100-acre business. I forgot about that. I thought that was, I didn't understand how that's going to work.
Yeah, so the 100 acres again for the renovation of the golf course. There there needs, and we'll get into this, there needs to be a time where we actually hold possession of it for financial reasons. Once we get what we need to renovate the golf course and get it back up and running, then we would donate it back to the town of Woodbridge or hold it in conservation. And I think Jerry and I talked about it. During that time, it could always stay in conservation. I mean, we can donate from the very beginning at the sale.
So you're amenable to a conservation easement from the beginning?
From the very beginning.
Okay.
You know, when we purchase the property, that 100 acres will be.
Is that possible?
Well, those details will be subject to working out with your lawyer, the town's lawyer.
Correct.
But the concept would be that the town would ultimately own the area that the golf course would be on.
Correct.
And you would be
And we
leasing it for a nominal amount.
Yeah, and we would lease it
That's
back
true.
for a nominal amount,
That's
and
what
we would maintain
I
it.
do remember
you
the
know.
word lease in there somewhere, and I.
Yes.
Okay.
But again, this is just off the top of our heads, and we'd have to really sit down and work out the details and the legalities.
Absolutely, 100% agree.
Okay. So, I'm gonna call on all the selectmen to ask all your questions of Brian after you're all set. Mika?
Could you start as soon as possible?
This is not gonna.
We wish.
What was voiced to me in terms of the folks, residents, is questioning as far as financing is concerned, and the ability to do much of what you're suggesting with the amounts you've budgeted so far.
Sure.
Has there been any revision on that? Have you re-looked at that? And again, the thing that I pointed out last time and will point out again is that the managers of the golf course who had it at the time, we closed the golf course because they were saying it would be $3 million worth of renovations for us to do something there.
Correct.
And I think you budgeted about $1.5 million.
Yeah, I do apologize. I was just a little caught off guard with financial numbers in the last presentation. I thought we were talking about it, but our total budget is actually $34 million.
Okay.
So it was a little bit more than what I originally said. I went back to our pro forma and went through all the numbers. We did have 1.75 for the golf course, renovation. What I can say to that, and also about the house, I know there was a question about $100 a square foot and things like that. What I can say about that is those numbers that you're getting, you have to understand, are retail numbers. I mean, that's a management company who needs to make money off of that renovation. This is, myself as a builder. Sure, if you come to my house and say, Brian, or I come to your house and you say, Brian, I want an addition on the back of the house, I'm going to tell you $150 to $200 a square foot because I need to make money, obviously. So my $120, I think it was, per square foot for a house is obviously my cost, my, retail versus wholesale, I guess is the way to weigh it here. And the same would hold true for the golf course, in terms of the renovation of it. We would hire the superintendent from the very beginning to help walk us through. So it's really a yearly salary for, that plus the material that we need. So I guess the best way to put it is retail versus wholesale. And yes, Mika, I've been looking at these numbers for a year now, and it's not just something we put together. I gotta report back to my investors. So God forbid I'm ever off.
Have you secured financing for this yet?
We are under a commitment from Clubhouse Capital, so they have committed to fund the project for us. Now, there's no, I wouldn't say written agreement, but they I guess for their federal regulations with money, they cannot agree to a project that isn't a project. I guess is the way to put it. This isn't an approved project. We don't own. We're not going into contract with the town with a purchase price, so on and so forth. So they technically cannot commit, and obviously a bank would never commit without detailed drawings and contracts, so on and so forth.
But go ahead. Along those lines, as far as financing is concerned, you said Clubhouse Capital is who you're using. Now I know they do two things. They either invest themselves or they find you money through
Correct.
other banks. Is that it?
So it's twofold. Good question. They are putting in the upfront equity of the project, and then they will go also and get the debt, the debt on the property, they will go and get that as a package. But Clubhouse is going to be providing the actual cash equity for the project.
Who will be the owner of the project?
It'll be a new LLC between ourselves and between InSite and Clubhouse Capital.
So are you putting up any money at all, or is it all gonna
Sure, I mean, not $10 million, but sure, yes, I am investing, and I will be basically, for all intents and purposes, 50-50 partners with Clubhouse.
So Clubhouse right now has no legal obligation to finances. They've told you on a handshake that they're interested in doing it.
Handshake and the letter that I provided you guys. I mean, I know that's not legally binding, but it is a commitment letter. What I'm going to go off of if they ever back out and say, hey, no. and
What would,
go ahead. I was going to say I just don't know what else to get from them, I guess is the point. At this point in the game, I don't know what else I can get from them to say, yes, here, it's sitting in escrow waiting for you to spend it, kind of thing. And maybe you do, Jerry. I'm not sure.
Ideally, from I think the board's point of view, it would be nice if they had a letter from a lender that say we hereby commit X amount of dollars for the project at the Woodbridge Country Club at X amount of interest rate, payable over X period of time at the rate of.
And again, I personally, being in this business and knowing, no bank is ever going to do that without drawings and plans and
So I would say no bank. It depends on the lender.
On the lender.
If you're strong enough, a bank will do it.
Oh,
If you're
absolutely.
a regular customer, you could come in here with all kinds of commitments from banks. But on the other hand, if you're not a regular customer and you're not a regular lender, then it's harder to get that. I agree with you.
And I could talk to George at Clubhouse. I know he's very specific on one or two banks that he always uses. So we might be able to get something like that. I mean it's definitely something that I'll look into.
to that end, what would be considered if obviously anything that's considered has to go through the town. Town has to vote on it. So is that what they're looking for as, okay, let's start the project, Jerry? I guess this is as much for you as I'm just trying to think of what your timeline is and what the particular steps are in the process.
I think any bank would have to do a serious appraisal to figure out, the ratio between the value and what they're lending. They would have to look at what the project can generate. And right now, you don't know exactly how much you're going to pay for that. You're going to sell.
No, we do. We're
so
way
maybe,
we're way beyond that.
Maybe you can get that based on what they feel the value of the project is. Maybe they can give you an unequivocal commitment, which would help, I think, the board and help
I agree with you,
voters.
Jerry. An appraisal is the next step for us. And my investor is going to want an appraisal too, obviously. I mean, we've gone over the numbers together, but he's going to want a full appraisal. And I forgot the actual technical term for it, but it's a as-built appraisal. In other words, what the project is worth once it's stabilized and done. That's what needs to be done.
Keep in mind that since you're only going to really own 50 acres or 40 acres, they're only going to be able to lend based on the appraisal of that piece of property, not the 150.
Correct.
So that changes how much money.
And that goes to the point of us having possession of the golf course land. With the lending part of it, just in the beginning to get the funds to do the.
Yeah, but they're not going to be happy with you flipping it after the deal. They're going to want to make sure. In fact, there'll be a clause that says you can't get rid of it. So.
But I guess if it's held in conservation anyway, they know that there's no.
No, but they won't have a lien on it. They only have the lien on the 50 acres, and that will go into their consideration of how much money they're willing to give you and whether that's enough for you to do the project.
For me to do the project. Yeah, I mean, listen, we're very comfortable with the numbers, and I will 100% look into some sort of letter or agreement, with a bank, with a lender, on that additional debt.
Now, as far as the country club, as far as the clubhouse and the golf course per se, do you expect to generate a profit on this?
In our pro forma,
eventually.
Obviously, eventually. In our pro forma, we've done it as strictly a break even. So anything above it is a benefit, but we've also cushioned for a loss. Mm-hmm. Now, listen, we know the golf course business is a tough business to be in, and one of Clubhouse's financial I guess, equity investor in their business is a professional golfer by the name of Brad Faxon. So this would come with a lot of golf experience, and that's part of the reason why I went with Clubhouse Capital and not one of my other investors, is that it comes with golf course experience and golf course management, so to speak.
Yeah, golf course can generate money if it provides other services.
Correct.
Like restaurants and banquets and.
Which is the main reason why we want to renovate the clubhouse and make it, like we said, a quality restaurant.
Right.
It's not going to be just obviously I'm going to have 100, 255 and older, people within walking distance. I would love for them to come to the restaurant at night and eat dinner, so to speak.
Sure.
So it won't just be your typical, public golf course bar and grill, so to speak.
And your plans for the pool are what?
Basically just a renovation, a revamping. I know, the coping needs to be redone. Was it the lining also? Yeah, so it's
Scarifying or something?
Plaster.
Yeah, the plaster. So, I mean, it's really just making it right, I guess, is the point. And then we'll look into new pool furniture, so on and so forth. And the snack bar, I haven't seen it. I don't know if that really needs anything at this point.
And you're gonna run that as, you're gonna run that yourself? The pool yourself? Okay.
Correct. Yes. The just think about it as the golf course will be run by the management company, and the clubhouse will be managed by
hospitality
company. LLC,
right.
To be formed, so to speak.
Okay.
So there's a renovation to the clubhouse, and that will. Did you mention a banquet hall as part of that? Or?
Correct. So
okay.
It's right now they have a huge, up on the top floor. There's a ballroom, I guess is the point.
Okay.
That will be renovated into banquet room, so to speak.
And then a restaurant in addition.
A restaurant.
And then the pool for public use.
Pool for public use.
Okay.
Everything would be public use on the clubhouse.
Okay, and the tennis courts?
The tennis courts are only for the 55 and older community.
Okay. What did I forget? I think that's it. Okay. Other questions? Okay, so thank you for coming again and answering our questions. What? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So Selectman Dye was not here and Terry Schatz was not here as well, so I'm assuming they're gonna get to watch this and have some questions as well.
Absolutely.
So, stay tuned at this point. Thank you so much.
Will do. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. That's everything, right? Motion to adjourn?
Oh, I love that one.
Thank you. Joe, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. Mika, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.